All right, round 2. Got you back already.
I'm back, baby.
Back, baby. How you been?
I've been so good.
So good?
Yeah.
What's happening? Why are you so good? I know, but tell the world. Tell the world.
I feel like a lot has happened since we recorded our last podcast, which was not even that long ago, but I don't know, suddenly I just like hit some traction and I was just like, I know some things I want to do. So
Must be nice. I'd love to hit some traction. That's a really good way of putting it. I love that.
that's what it feels like, kind of, where it's just like, it feels like you're not like fighting against the grain. Things just kind of make sense for a bit, which is kind of new for me also.
Yeah.
So I started a blog.
Ooh, exciting.
Yes, built my own website, which was a feat in itself and something I'm actually very proud of.
Yeah, it looks great too.
Thank you. And I've been starting to work with some photography clients.
Nice.
And just kind of getting some confidence around that. I have a steady client that I'm working with, a gym actually.
Nice.
And so I'm doing that, also starting to work out more because
That helps too, right?
I get shit when I don't show up to work out as well as take photos. So life's been good. I've just been feeling really good about where I'm at and just really enjoying the way that I'm spending my time. So,
And like, forgive me, but I'm going to ask you questions that I know the answer to, but just to like bring people along for the ride. How long have you wanted to do a blog or some sort of creative endeavor to put yourself out there into the world? Maybe not like specifically a blog, but like I know just from like even our conversations, it sounds like some other people in your life knew this even longer, but it's always seemed like you've had an inkling to do something like that.
Yeah. I honestly don't know if I could peg when it was. I've thought about doing a blog for years. I think when I was younger, I always enjoyed writing and kind of always got compliments on like my story writing and things like that.
Mr. Mosier?
Yeah.
Who didn't, eh?
Yeah, seriously. And always just kind of enjoyed and was able to really express myself that way, which I think is not everyone can do that. So I thought about it for a while, I don't even know, like years. I can't even trace it back. But obviously along with that, there's so many fears around it. And also just, I know for myself that until the last probably 2-3 months, I was not in a place to ever do it. You have to be, maybe you don't have to be in that place, but I have always been so hard on myself that I had to get to the place where I had to have enough confidence to be like, you know what, actually I do have something to share that somebody might find interesting. What
do you think changed in the last couple of months that changed where you were to put you in a place where you felt like you could attack something as big as a blog and like starting a website? Or is that hard to put your finger onto?
Yeah, I think it's been a long time coming. Like we kind of talked about on the last episode. I've been, especially the last 2 years, on just a really big, steep growth path, and just learning so much about myself, building confidence, really
learning some lessons.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, and having kind of, I can't think of the word, cultivating. That's what it is. Cultivating like the people that are in my life and like kind of, the energy that's in my life. And I've just really come to a place where I really, really like who I am. And I'm able to say that out loud, which is something that I could have never done before. And so kind of now that I'm at that stage, I feel the confidence to share. And then as soon as I started sharing, the response was just so incredible. And that just like fueled me to go, okay, I am not crazy. This is not just like my closest friend saying, like, do this, like start it. You have something to say. It's real. So
it's fun for me too, to just kind of be along for the ride. I mean, I feel very privileged to be one of those people that you told early on in the process that you were like starting to build the website and that you were taking that leap, and to kind of watch you go through a very similar thing that I went through with this podcast of starting of like the same fears, the same like getting over those fears, getting it out, then like seeing the response. Like it's kind of fun to watch someone else kind of go down the same path that I felt like I was just in like a year ago, right? Like it's been very fun.
There's no way I could not say that you were a big part of it. I mean, I did this. No, I'm serious, because I did this podcast and I told you I just like loved the experience of the reflection that I did leading up to it, and then the conversations you and I had about it, and we kind of started spending a lot more time together after we recorded that.
I think we did a 3-hour podcast and then sat in your apartment and talked till like I don't know what time, probably did another like 5 hours on top of that. Yeah.
Yes, because one of the girls texted me and she's like, "Okay, I haven't heard from you. I just so you know, I'm not listening to 6 hours of a podcast if you're still recording." I'm like, no, we stopped, but we put in another 3 off camera. Yeah. And so it just kind of hearing your journey and how you've been able to do this and create something and just kind of what it's done for you and how much you've enjoyed it. Maybe I was like, I want a piece of that a little bit.
Which is so funny because like that's all I wanted it to be like, because that's exactly what podcasts were to me, was to listen to other people going through that same journey and seeing what it gave them and seeing what it gave me and wanting to do that for others. And then now to start seeing that, start again, it's still in that phase where it's just, the people close around you. And I'm excited for that day when I can start sharing that with the world and stuff. But like to start to see the dominoes start to fall, even in my little circle of people that are listening right now, it's a cool feeling. It's a really cool feeling. Did you listen to, or not listen, you don't listen to blogs. Did you read any blogs like back in the day? Like how did you have that? Because like when I heard you talk and heard your friends talk about the fact that they weren't surprised you're going to start a blog, to me, until I read your blog, I'd never read a blog in my life.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so I always knew they existed. I knew they're out there and I knew like what a blog was, but I never had any to kind of base my idea of what a blog could be. Had you like read any like growing up, like when you're younger, or even like closer to today?
Honestly, I'm not a blog reader either. Really? I like, again, have always known blogs existed. There's a couple that I've stumbled upon and checked back in and things. A lot of people that are like now on Instagram and big influencers and stuff kind of started as bloggers. And there's a couple of those that but none that I avidly followed.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because I don't know why I just thought a blog was just my medium. I think I was just drawn to the idea of just sharing through written
You've always
word.
been a writer.
Yeah. And so that's just the medium. But it's funny that you say that because one of our mutual friends was asking me the other day, said something about the blog. And he's like, so like, what is a blog? Like, how do you do it? Like, how does it work? And I'm like, you know what? I don't really fucking know. Yeah. All I know is what I'm doing. Is that I just decided, kind of like anything with my life. I'm like, I just decided I was going to do this. And I think when I texted you, I actually was like, I decided that day, I was like, I'm going to start a blog and I'm building a website. And I texted you and I said, I'm starting a website. And you were just like, cool. Like, what's it going to be for? And I'm like, it's going to have a blog on it and I'm going to run my photography through it and whatever else I want. And if I want a motherfucking website, I'm going to have a motherfucking website. I love it. And I bought the 2-week trial to like build the site. And I think I had to extend it one time. And in 3 weeks, the site was live. I just kind of set my mind to it. But so he was asking me, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know how anyone else does it or if this is the right way, but this is the way I'm doing it. And so I basically just sit down and have a thought and I just write whatever I think. I usually leave it for like a couple hours in case I think back and go, oh, I could have said that differently or whatever. Yeah. Then I just proofread it and publish it. Like it's. Do you run it? Do you have any like any of your friends that you run it by or anybody? You just kind of go right to the world. Yeah, it just goes out and it's. I don't know. Maybe that process won't work, but for right now, it's working. And then kind of, I think there's just so much that I have to talk about that up until this point. There's so much there. So throughout the week, I have my phone all the time with a voice memo. Yeah. So if I have a real thought, sometimes I'll pull that out and pull out a voice memo and just say like, this is what I'm thinking and record it so I can go back to it. And then when I decide I'm going to sit down and write something, I just either it's something in my head or I'd pull out one of those and just kind of start writing my thoughts on it. And it's like, how many days a week do you think you write? Is it just like when inspiration hits it, would you say like 2 days a week, like just once just to make sure you have one for that next week or like just once? Just once. Like I literally write the blog that I'm going to release and it's, but, and I mean, again, that's probably not the most professional way of doing it, but it allows me to kind of talk about like what I'm thinking right now and relate it to what's going on in the week that made me think of that rather than just like sitting down and writing a bunch of stuff and scheduling out a month's worth of things to publish and whatever. I don't know. That doesn't just connect with me as much as I want it. I want my blogs to feel like a conversation with me. Yeah. And in order for them to feel that way, I think it has to be current and what I'm feeling right now, which changes from day to day and week to week for me. So it's yeah, I have to be very current with it, with the way I'm doing it right now.
So like, I'm just curious because you've written some pretty, heavy's not the right word, but like deep, like you've gone into some pretty meaty subjects already with your blog. And I'm just curious of like, do you ever struggle between like what's current and what you're ready to talk about? Like, is there things that like are current to you and you would like to talk about, you're just not there yet? Because I know for myself with the podcast, that's a lot of the times where I have a whole list of things I would love to talk about, which either I'm not there yet, or there's some sort of circumstances outside of my control that allow me to talk about things. Like, do you ever struggle with finding that balance of wanting to be current, but also like wanting to talk about things? Do you have like a list of like future topics maybe that you aren't writing on yet, but are kind of on the horizon, things you'd like to chat about?
Yeah, I think for me, just because it's so fresh and so new, that I recognize that most of the people that are reading the blog right now are people that know me because I'm putting it out on social media, and that's the majority is people that actually know me, but also even people that follow me on social media, a lot don't actually know me.
Right.
So there is a lot of things that I do want to talk about, but if you don't kind of have some background, it's not going to make sense. So like, I do kind of recognize that there is like a certain level of getting to know me that has to happen in order for me to talk about certain things. Right. So I'm kind of trying to figure out the mix of, I want to share things about myself because I think that that can really help other people, but I also want to make sure it's not like, okay, here's me talking just about me for all this time, and kind of be able to mix in also things that are just for others, people's broadly benefits, broad, like not necessarily about me, just something that I've learned. So, and
of all the blogs you've released, I just read and reread all of them this morning to make sure I was fresh. And even things that are very personal to you, you're always trying to add things of like what you learned and like what people can apply to their lives. Like each one, no matter how personal to you, has like a message or like something that like people can take away from it. Like, so is that something that you knew going in that you wanted to do? Is that like a part of the aspect of it? Or is that just what you found? Like, as you started writing, that's what came out of you?
No, that was definitely my intent. So kind of my intent with the blog wasn't, oh, I want to share my story and share my life. It was, I want to connect with people. I've been fortunate to have really incredible people in my life and really incredible influences in my life that have taught me a lot of things. I've also, I don't want to say I'm fortunate, but I've gone through some things that others haven't and have learned things through that if I can pass some of those things along without people having to go through the hardship, that's great. And yeah, I think for me, it's more about connecting with people. And like I kind of said, have you ever, I said this on my site, but I guess maybe people that are listening to this haven't checked it out. So I can repeat myself. Like I kind of said in my intro of what the blog is like, have you ever been having a day where you're having just a terrible day, everything's going wrong, you feel terrible, and then you see something that's just exactly what you needed to hear? Somebody shares something on Instagram, or somebody reaches out and tells you something, and you're just like, oh my God, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. It just changes your whole day. Those things aren't just by chance. I don't believe. I believe that there's a reason for all of that. We have connections, all of us, like the universe is at play and at work, kind of using us as conduits to get messages and support and things to each other. And I have loved in the past when I've shared something and somebody has said that to me, like, oh my God, thank you so much for sharing this. And I've been on the other end of it. And I just kind of wanted to take that times 10 and just go, you know what? I'm so lucky. I have people in my life that I can talk to about everything and anything, but not everybody does. And that's something that I've learned too from moving to Edmonton and just meeting new people, is that like not everybody has a core group of solid friends. I'm probably one of the few blessed that I'm still best friends with the 5 girls that I have been since elementary school that have seen it all done and all. Not everybody has that. No. So if you don't have that, I can be that. And I hope that I can kind of share things through my blog that connect to people, and we can kind of have conversations that maybe you're not having. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even like having those people, because like when I think about it from my own perspective, I have tons of people in my life that I could share with. I just don't. And that's on me. I'm just not a big sharer. Like, I kind of got to pull it out of me. This is my sharing, right? And I do that, and I found huge leaps in it. But like my best friend Chase, me and him don't talk too much about what's bugging us. We talk about other things. We talk sports. We talk golf. We talk, not that golf's not a sport, but you know what I mean. But it's nice to have someone where there's no pressure for you to have to, like, because it is a relationship, it is a conversation. That's kind of what you're trying to face it as. But now there's no expectations. No. From their side, right? Like they don't have to.
You don't have to say anything back. Exactly. You can have this conversation with me and with yourself, and you don't have to share if you don't want to. But I've also opened it up and said if you want to share. And I was so pleasantly surprised when I got some messages of people that did share. And kind of up until that point, I had gotten messages just thanking me for sharing and saying how much what I had said had impacted them, or things that they had never looked at that way, which was so incredibly rewarding at that. But then this past week, I kind of added in my blog, like, if you want to reach out, if you need a safe space to just share and receive some support and some love back, I can do that for you. And I think because the blog is small, like I really can. And the messages that I got and the things that people shared with me, it was just incredible. Yeah. That somebody would feel safe, and people that I don't know well, they're not close friends. They're people that I know who they are, and we maybe grew up together and things like that, but that we don't talk regularly, and that they felt safe to share with me. It's just, that's everything that I wanted out of this.
So sticking on like the feedback you're getting, I want to ask a couple questions there. I'm curious about the time in between when you released and you got the positive feedback, kind of that like anxiety moment. Because I think we've talked about a little bit about this offline, different when you release a blog that maybe is a bit more meaningful to you, or is, a deeper topic, and you kind of run it by me like, hey, like when you release something, it's like, what is that feel like? I'm curious for you what that moment has been like. And then also I'm curious with, now that you've released, I think 5?
Something like that. Still very early.
Still early, but like, has that feeling changed? Have you started to get to the point where you feel less of that anxiety in between release and the feedback, where you're kind of in your own head about what's this going to be like? Has that changed any? Has that gotten easier? Has it gotten worse? Because where I'm curious is, it seems like, you're getting further along the path and you're releasing more, you're getting more comfortable with it, but also you're getting into deeper topics and you're releasing more meaningful and kind of scary things to talk about. So I'm wondering if it's getting easier, if it's getting harder, because
it kind of runs a parallel a little bit. Yeah. I think the last one I released this week was kind of the first time that I had really shared things that were super vulnerable about myself. And it really was, I was just scratching the surface and kind of dipping my toes in and sharing. Yeah. And
look who's come to visit. How did you get in here? I'm
so good.
You're going to be distracting. I'm going to have to go put you out, but you can have a little cuddle quick.
Hello.
Go back in the house. Who's calling you? Who's that? Wonderful. Now we don't even have to take her out. Just a small cameo.
Gives me a chance to collect my thoughts. Like, you can cut this one out, right? Yeah. What was I talking about?
I was asking you about like the feeling of.
Yes. Okay. The feedback.
It's all coming back to you now?
Yes. The feedback. Okay.
I'm just gonna pop that door closed, but I'm listening to you. I'm listening.
Okay. I'm taking this solo now. This was kind of the first time that I shared things that were super intimate to me, and was just really kind of scratching the surface with that, even just dipping my toes in a little bit. As soon as I pushed publish, I was like, ooh, like, and it was a scary feeling, but I felt so confident and comfortable in sharing it. Yeah. So I wasn't scared about the content or anything. I was just like, what if no one says anything? Right. Or what, but then the feedback that I get is just so instantaneous. It's just that
you're not left in
I don't
that limbo
even have
for
a
very
chance.
long.
No, it's great.
That is awesome, because I feel like that's what is nice about the blog too, is when you post it, there's going to be people that can read that in 5 minutes and give you feedback. Whereas like when I release a 3-hour episode,
there's a lull there.
there's definite lull, and you don't know whether that lull is just natural of like people not getting to it. Is that because people don't like it? Like and that's the thing. I'm glad you brought that up of like the confidence that it's quality content and that I stand behind everything I say. I know there's only love in my heart. I'm not worried about
what I said,
but yet still it's very scary.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like, you can't even put your finger on like what is scary. Like it's it's vulnerability, right? And then like you said, what if people say nothing? What if apathy? I almost don't care if people hate it. At least they would feel something. It's like, what if it just, I don't know. But then it never really does. Like you never know. Even if it did, you wouldn't know it really. Like you don't know the difference between nobody listened to it and just nobody giving you feedback that you never have.
Totally. Because there's things that I have seen, read, listened to that have moved me that I didn't reach out to somebody and say something. I just took that in and took it and didn't say anything.
Yeah. And I think that's good for us to talk about that, of how much that means to me. And I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast, but that's, like, I'm not rolling in dough from this podcast. I'm not, getting invited to movie premieres. I'm not famous. There's none of that type of reward. I know. This might surprise the people listening, but like where it's been worth it has been those messages and like that feedback from those people. And some of the, like you say, some of the conversations that get started and the people that reach out and who you reconnect with, like that has made it all worth it. And I think that's where I've changed a lot too with how I operate with the things I enjoy. I reach out way more. Now that I've been on the other side of it and I realize what it means, I'm way more apt to send that message, to make that post. Oh, I really enjoyed this, right? And I still don't do it enough. Like with how much stuff I'm taking in, how much I'm enjoying, and how much things impact me, just because I'm a pretty emotional guy and things usually hit me pretty deep. I still don't post all that much, but I noticed in myself it's changed even a little bit. Have you noticed, maybe this is too early for you, has it changed in how you operate from the other side of that now that you've seen what it means to you when people do reach out to you?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely changed the way I think about it. I don't know if I've like really had the opportunity. I've been so busy this past month. But definitely makes me think about, I have always been this way where I always welcome a message or a reach out from absolutely anyone. I love connecting with people. But yeah, it definitely makes me feel more courageous maybe to do that in the future. And yeah, with what you were saying, I think it was like 2 or 3 days after the website went live, and I had already gotten so many nice messages. And I sent a text to my mom and I said, honestly, if I never write another blog, this has just been such a rewarding experience. It would have been worth all the time that it took to put it together. And that's the thing is like, I think it's important to, we want that feedback, but that's also not why you do it. You don't do it for the attaboy. Like, I don't care. Like, and that's what I've realized is writing has been so therapeutic to me that I don't care if anyone reads it. Right. So it's hard to explain, because the fear is not even that no one will read it, because it doesn't matter. I think the fear is that someone will read it and misunderstand. The fear is not, I don't care if no one reads it, but is that someone will read it and misunderstand. But also, like we kind of talked about in our last podcast, like I just have to release that you're not going to be for everybody, and that's okay, and that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you, and it's just none of your business. But yeah, and that being misunderstood is such a scary thing. Like, and I feel like that's a little bit less. I have on a podcast, I have so long to really talk about all these different things. If I talk about something that I'm worried about me being misunderstood, most of the time I can go back and clarify and add on to it if I'm worried about that. But imagine in a blog, it's a little different, because you could always read it again and realize like, how can this be taken, and kind of do that in that moment. But I feel like I kind of rely, to make myself feel better about that specific fears, I just rely on the volume and like the length. And also too, that I plan on doing this for a long time, and that even if I'm misunderstood over the long arc of time, eventually they'll get it and they'll realize who I am. Right. And like, I think part of that makes me feel good about it too is like, I've listened to so many podcasts over, and there's been guys that
I didn't really like at the start. Like I didn't really know where they're coming from, and I didn't really understand one aspect of their personality. But then over time and listening to them and them being vulnerable in a different moment made all those other puzzle pieces kind of fall into place. And it's like, oh, I get you. I understand where you're coming from. And now I feel much differently about those aspects, right? And just to lean on that for myself, as long as I don't quit and I keep going and I keep trying my best to be as vulnerable as I can, what I truly think about myself is going to shine through.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like you said, you don't do it for the feedback. And if I did, I probably would have quit a long time ago, because that's like hearing you talk about it. It reminded me of like, I think in my head, the amount of feedback I get is very much biased by what's happening right now. And I don't remember back when I first started and there was tons of feedback, right? When first couple episodes, first couple months of doing it, tons of people were reaching out, and it was just, very much.
Because it's new and it's fresh.
New. Yeah. And now a couple of years in, it's few and far between, right? And it's very impactful when it happens. But like I said, if that was actually what I was doing it for, I probably would have quit by now, right? Like, and that's both good and bad. It's, you'd always like to have more of that, just like selfishly, or just, whatever that is.
Just to know that what you're doing is having impact.
Yeah. But also on the flip side, the positive side of it is to know that even without that stuff, it's still amazing, right? I do enjoy this so much that even if nobody ever listened, it'd be worth it to me, right? Like, it's interesting.
Feel the same.
And it's cool. Like just recently, I think maybe this week, like to hear Joe Rogan on his podcast talk about, someone that is at the absolute, for like what I want to do, someone that has reached probably the highest pinnacles the world has ever seen. For him to talk about, like even him, he said like, what, if people didn't listen to this, I probably wouldn't do this. Right. Like, and it's like, wow, like I probably would. Right. Like, but he didn't start it to be that person. He has so many other aspects of his life. It's like, it almost made me feel good of like, oh man, like even someone that is as huge as him has that feeling of that, because I do feel guilty. Like as much as I do enjoy this and I would do it, like it's for so much more. You still want people to listen. And I find myself falling into that trap of being upset about where it is and getting caught up in the reality of where it is now. And to hear someone like that he kind of, even someone that big has that idea in their head where it would bug them if nobody listened to it. It's like, man, that kind of made me feel, a little bit better. It didn't solve all my problems, but man, like just that little piece of hearing someone else go through something that you respect is like, man, that changed my whole idea on it.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
And I think that like for both of us, and we want to impact people. And so that's something that I am kind of struggling with now too, of like where to take this direction. It's like, okay, I launched it, now what? Right. Is that I want to impact people. Mm-hmm. In order to impact people, I have to get my blog out to a mass of people, because I want to impact the person that doesn't know me, that actually really needs this. I mean, I love for my friends and people that I know to read it. But I want to impact somebody that really needs it. And so I would love if I could just push a button and say, okay, here's my blog. It's now just on everybody's screen. Everybody has access to it and knows it's out there, but that's just not how it works. So for me, the part that is a little bit uncomfortable for me is the fact that in order to make that happen, I have to, and I'm quoting, I guess you'll see me on the video, but influence and become kind of an influencer with, and that's a tough thing for me, because I don't know why it's tough. I guess I worry that people think that I'm doing things for the wrong reason or what, but really it's just that like, that's the way to get something out there. And so I'm having to really get comfortable with looking at Instagram and what people like and what's a good time to post, so that your post gets pushed through the algorithm to people, not because I want likes, but because I want it to reach that person that really needs it. And when I really do start sharing, and that's the thing too, is where I'm trying to get it going and I'm really excited about writing, but also I'm like, do I want to write everything right away when not everybody's going to see it? Or do I want to wait and hold off on certain things until it's reached more people, which then that doesn't feel good either. And so it's just, and so I'm having to kind of watch that stuff and be conscious of what to do to kind of push it out further. And that's been something that I'm learning. But I think also like, And I have absolutely nothing against influencers. I follow tons of them and have friends that do that. I love it. It's literally the dream job ideal.
Yeah.
But there's an amount of confidence that it takes to do that. And I guess I'm working on that. But also I think that the style of influencer, or maybe a common style of influencer, I don't resonate with as a person, but that's also not the only way to influence. Right. And I think that there's space for someone like me to just do it different
and do it how
and
you
to show people that like, yeah, that's fabulous. But like, it's also okay if you're living like this.
Yeah.
Like, it's great if you have your matcha in the morning and work out and your life is just great. Like, fuck yeah, like that's what everybody wants. I want that. But it's also okay if you slept in, rolled out of bed, you look like trash and you're late for work, or, you know, that's also okay too. And you can be really successful and not look like the people that you see predominantly on TikTok and things like that right now. And so maybe that's exciting to me too.
And I struggle with that. I've been struggling with that for a long time, of like becoming more and more comfortable with what I'm putting out in like the podcast and like really confident in the episodes and that. But then the other side of it, that influencer side, like it just makes my skin crawl. I've always hated it. Like, and I don't even really like any influencers. Like I don't even have that side of it. Like I recognize it. I don't have any hate for them, but I can't name one that I really, that doesn't do something that I love outside of the influencing world.
Right.
Like there's
you don't have like a real enjoyment over like social media content.
No.
Whereas like I enjoy content creators, like all of that.
I do too. Like I love like YouTube creation. I love like podcasters, right? And then I'll follow the social media that like is just a conduit to get you to that stuff because they're actually creating something. For some reason, when your creation is just I think it's my whole hang up with advertising. I cannot stand advertising. Never could. I am like vehemently opposed to it. I will like mute the TV at every commercial. I will like turn my phone off so I don't get like alerts on like hockey so I can back it up. And I think this is coming from like, that's how my parents used to watch. They hated commercials, always like a thing. And then social media kind of turned into, it's a big commercial for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's fine if you have something to sell. But then there's these people that just influence to be influenced and don't have anything to sell. And they're just doing commercials for commercials, essentially. And it just, I never want to be that. And I really struggle with it. And not only that, but like I come on here and I rail against social media and how awful it is for people, how much I despise it. And then I turn around, and for me to be successful in what I need to do exactly what I talk about not doing. And I just feel like the biggest hypocrite in the world. And I'm trying to find a balance of where, and in my head, what I've tried to come up with is trying to find people to bring on to do that side of it. Like people that love that influence, because if you love it, I have no problem if you have a passion for it, but I know I don't. I know it's going to be completely disingenuous for me to pretend I have a passion to get into the analytics of it. Like I've never looked at how many people watch any of my stories. I've never looked at who looks at them. I've never gone into my insights once. I've never gone into any of that. And like even the thought of it turns my stomach, right? But I know
someone needs to do that,
right? And they need to say, hey, idiot, you need to use hashtags. Every time I hit that hashtag button, I throw up a little bit in my mouth. I still do it, but I despise it, right? Like I
think it's interesting to like go back to something that you just said, is you follow people that are creating something that you value, right? That they're advertising something that you value.
Yeah.
To you, like influencer content and things like that is not something you value, but there is people that value that content, and that is the thing. They're not going to listen to a podcast, but that is the thing. They love to see inspo and how people are living their lives and products and things that like they love that. But that's just not what you value. So I think that's really smart to have somebody else that can do that, to play your strengths, like we always say.
Yeah.
So
and balance that out with people that can match their strengths or where you falter, where your weaknesses are, right?
Yeah.
I'm working on that. And also, but I think at a certain point, it can't be just somebody else, because then you get out of that. Like you said, you want to do it how you do it. And I feel like you're right in that. And there is a way for me to do it the way I want to do it. Right. And but there's certain realities to algorithms and to these social medias where there's certain things you just have to know. Exactly. And like, I don't know it well enough to even know which ones those aren't. Every time I try and stick my nose in it deep enough to parse out which things I have to do and which parts I can kind of do my own way, I just get so repulsed by it that I back out and I never end up getting to that point, right? Like, and that's where I think it's also a safety blanket in a way too, of like knowing that there's a huge part of this that I'm not doing. It makes it a lot easier to swallow the size that it's at for like how, because there's definitely a disparity between what I feel like the worth of my podcast by like what I feel about it, just genuinely of like being a part of it and knowing like the content I'm putting out and just love podcasts versus like the response and like the downloads and all that. Like I feel like there's a disparity there, and that's a safety blanket I can use of like, oh, but
I'm not pushing it, but I'm not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm very good at making excuses for myself. So I know that there's a part of that is just 100, like
you're holding your own self back,
but it's my own self back.
But it's so that you have that reason that,
And I know it's not a not true reason. I genuinely know all those things I just said about social media are true, but I know also it's me holding myself back in a way. Right. And like to try and so much of my life is trying to parse out which part of this is just me holding myself back and which part of this is actual true. Or they're both true, but what percentage of the whole is one more than the other? And where do I take action? Which do I give more weight to for the actions that I take that are going to best benefit me?
Right.
And that's an interesting tightrope to kind of walk, I find.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe too, like I've just seen people succeed in incredible ways. Like I have a friend that is an artist. She paints nudes, and kind of her goal behind it is just spreading self-love for women's bodies.
I thought you were going to say spreading something else, but sure. Spreading love. Spreading
love.
Like, her goal is just spreading. I'm like, oh, okay. Gotcha. I'm with you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And it's just, and so she was, she had a full-time marketing type position. And she was a regular 9 to 5 and was doing her art on the side and doing commissions and then selling prints. And, she ended up going viral on TikTok. So she ended up she jumped on TikTok, started kind of pushing her art through Instagram and TikTok. She went viral on TikTok, and she had so many commissions that she was able to quit her full-time job, do her art full-time, which is what she loves. Yeah. And her commissions were closed for the last 6 months because she just had so many people. She's like, I can't take on any more people. She's now just opening them up again. And she's impacting people. She's selling her paintings all over the world, and they're people's own. So you send in a photo of your own self nude, and she paints it, and you get this photo that you look at and go, oh my God, that's beautiful. That's me. And she's getting all this amazing feedback from these women that are like, did you change something from my photo or whatever? And she's like, no, that's you. Wow. And so she's just impacting these people. And you know what, is making TikToks her favorite thing? No, art is, but it's allowed her to be able to do that. And I think just because I've kind of seen that through a few different people, that I'm like, that's just like, that's the method to be able to impact. Yeah, definitely need to start a TikTok. And that's the thing. And like, also, I know like we're doing video for this podcast, which is something that I've like, how much time extra did that take me from like setting up all the audio stuff and then putting that there? 10 seconds? Yeah. Like, and it's not perfect video. I don't even know if it's still running right now. It might have already crashed. It might have gone down. I think it's on. Who knows? Right? Like, but like, because again, this is where I think I hold myself back of like, I know that having a TikTok is probably one of the biggest things I could do right now to get the growth that I want to see. Right. Mm-hmm. To have a TikTok, I need to have video to like, to roll that out with, and to know that like, I wasn't doing the video because I thought, what's the point of doing video when I don't have anybody to make the TikTok, right? Like just all the acrobatics. You got stuck in all the steps instead of just taking the first one. Exactly. And I do that all the time with so many different things. And I have so many ideas and all these different places I want to take, and all these new podcasts I want to start. I mean, me and you talk a lot. You get to be the sounding board for a lot of the crazy things I have, but I get so caught up in this web of things I want to do that I can't back it all the way up to step one of just turning the stupid fucking laptop on, putting a screen outside. I have video, right? Yeah. And the only reason I'm doing that now is because I brought on somebody that's hopefully going to help me get the YouTube channel caught up, and then
they have a lot of knowledge about TikTok and about Instagram and Reels and the algorithms and stuff, which is exactly what I need.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting for me. It's like, oh, well, now that that's tangible, this doesn't seem like that big of a deal to set up video.
No excuses.
No excuses. Exactly. I mean, I am Mr. Excuses. I will always find excuses. There's never going to be a time where I have no excuses. But if I can whittle them down to the point where I can't justify it, I will do it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I could come up with way more excuses, but now my list of excuses is, 100 pages long. There's a certain, maybe at page 50. Now you're into the bullshit excuses, and I know that. I can even follow. It's like, I know they're all bullshit, but there's a certain level of bullshit that I can't entertain in myself.
Yeah, you can't even,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not even going to let myself put up with this bullshit. You know what I mean? Like that self-accountability, which I wish was a lot higher and I didn't have to go so low, because I really do in like a lot of ways. And that's something, but that's a frame of mind too. Because when I'm not, like when I was working full time and I had like a schedule, I had to be up, and I'd be, up at 7 running every day. And I'd be at work at 8, and I'd be doing this. I was taking my cold showers. I was intermittent fasting. I was only drinking water till this. Like the excuse, like how far down I had to go before the excuses became bullshit and I would just do it, was a lot different than where it is now, where I sleep in all the time. It's just like,
it's like page 2 instead of page 50.
Yeah. Yeah. And now I'm like down at page 75 before I ever do anything. Right. And then that mindset of being mad at yourself for knowing that you need to change that and not doing it kind of pulls you deeper and deeper into it. And then it's kind of a self-fulfilling process. It is a spiral, right? And it's just hard. And those excuses are just always there. It's like, yeah, I know I need to just like, okay, get up at 7 every day. But it's playoffs. I'm going to be.
Oh my God, playoffs are tough now.
It is. It really is.
Even like I don't have an Oilers podcast, and like it's tough on Jayde. I skipped the gym a couple times this week, and I know I'm going to get shit already from my trainer that I'm working with. And yeah, it's tough.
Do you like that accountability of getting shit from a trainer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a group chat because I'm working with this gym. Shout out The Vault.
The Vault.
It's a wicked gym.
Looks like
so it. Yeah. So lucky. Because you trained with Damon before, but you weren't in this gym.
No, I was when I was up in
right?
Grand Prairie, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's sick. And
I want to go check it out. Actually, Damon's been really bugging me to get in there and come do work. He's like, I'll do it for free and stuff. But he was just, I don't know why Damon has this knack of reaching out when I'm just in like really low points, and like he's always like trying to, and it's just like,
the wrong time.
Yeah, I'm going through some shit right now. Like,
but
I would love to.
Maybe maybe he's more intuitive than you think. Maybe that's like what you really need is in the low point. Maybe it would fire you up.
And that's right. If I had like someone like him or like anybody at the Vault, just be like, hey, you have to be here at 8 a.m. every day, and like just to force me into that, right? Like, maybe Damon will hear this and fucking really hold me to it. I should shut up, shut my dirty mouth here.
It's like he has the money. He wants to do it.
I have no money. I'm poor, Jayde. You know this.
No, yeah. But you should check out the open, even just to check out the gym. It's so sick. But
it looks sick.
They're having an open house on, I think, June 4th. And they're bringing in like exotic cars, a DJ.
I thought you were going to say exotic dancers.
Well.
Maybe that too.
I mean, I'll be there. Yeah, so you
dancing
should go,
on the barbell.
Go check it out. Yeah. But I forget what I was even. So I'm working with these incredible people at the Vault, and I
don't know where you're going with it.
I was going.
Do you know how often that happens to me, Jayde, on these podcasts, where and that's the thing that bugs the shit out of me, because it's like I know I had a point, and I'm such like a circular thinker that sometimes I have like a starting point and an end point, but it has to go on a very wide circle to get there. And I get about halfway there, and I'm like, I know I was going to bring this all together. I had that idea, and then I lose it completely, and I'm just like, well. That's embarrassing. And the first couple times I did it, it like broke my heart, because I'm like, I'm a podcaster. That's like the one thing you can't do. Like I've never heard any of like my like favorite podcasters have that moment. And maybe they just cut it out.
They edit them.
Exactly. Right. So like I have no idea. And then like it still happens not quite frequently, but it happens from time to time. And like each time I've been so much less attached to it, just like, whatever, it happens.
It'll come back.
It's way less embarrassing the 57th time than the first time, but God, the first time, you're on a podcast. You got no excuse. You're a blogger.
Yeah.
If you forgot, you just sit there for about 5 minutes, then it comes back to you.
If I was writing about it. Yeah, no, but don't be hard on yourself for that, because I was, because I listen to Call Her Daddy sometimes, and honestly, like Alex Cooper, just like as a female entrepreneur, like I don't care if you like think that like talking about the sex thing and whatever, but honestly she has really pivoted this past year and doing like some really like meaningful interviews and things like that. But I saw she just said something on her Instagram. Someone asked like how long it takes to edit an episode. She said 2 days. So like people are cutting, cutting. So when you hear like Joe Rogan or like whoever, and it's just like completely seamless.
Yeah.
No, there was some stuff cut out.
Little funny stuff going on, right? And like, and I find like, because I listen to so many, I can tell when they're edited or not, right? Like, and you can feel that. That's why when shit goes wrong, like the dog coming running in, I love to leave that shit in, because like that's the cue to listeners of like, you are getting very unedited content, right? And I love that. That's always my favorite part of these ones. Like, not to say I dislike the ones that are edited, because there's tons that I like. Like there's like Lex Friedman, who has these big long form conversations. Like he does editing, like you can tell, but a lot of times it's just like in between questions and stuff, just like cut out like dead time, like as he's like getting to the next question and stuff. And you can tell even that, but then you're always asking the question of like, was that just dead time, or was there a whole nother piece of conversation that they just edited nicely so you don't even get that, right? Like, because I've edited a few things out of these podcasts before. Not recently. Like I'm trying to even like cast my mind back to the last time I did. And it's always at the guest request. I don't think I've ever cut anything out for myself. But like there's been times where I always would like, I think near the start, I would always say like, oh, I cut something in this episode. Just, I don't know. I like have this idea that I have to be honest with everybody. But if I hadn't, I don't think people would notice.
Yeah.
With no video. Like it's just like, it sounds like we just go from one subject to the next. So, like that kind of opened my eyes to like, I always had this idea of like, oh, if there's editing in a podcast, I'll know. It's like,
the point is for you not to know.
Yeah. Like once I did, I was like, actually it kind of doesn't sound like there's any editing at all. Right. Like, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that or the point of it, but
I came back to my thought.
Nailed it. See, you just got to vamp for a bit and it all comes back around.
You were asking me if I like the accountability of somebody telling me to work out. Yeah. I need that. Like I need somebody, we have a group chat. That's where I was going, is because I'm working with this amazing gym, The Vault. And so I'm in the group chat with like all the trainers and stuff like that, which is motivating as it is. And I said something today and kind of got like roasted. Like, no, you're going to be working out. Like, and I'm like, yeah. And so I texted in there and I was like, I have been slacking. I need punishment. And someone's like, I'll do it. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I'll put myself down for that. Like, I want that.
So you like working with like all the trainers then, like, or do you have like one person that works, because like that sounds like awesome. Like if just whoever's there, like whoever on the day, like just being in a group chat where like you have a time, but like not being accountable to one person. I feel like I would love that way more.
Yeah, no, that's definitely,
that's just because you're special.
And
you're working with them.
Well, I'm special, but no, and I've only worked out with Damon, but I mean, they're all just so awesome, and they all say like, oh, if you're ever there, because you can work out, you work out with your trainer, but then you have like a membership, you work out there by yourself. So they're always like, oh, if you're there working out, like, and you need help, like everybody's so awesome that way. But yeah, a few of them have been like, I'll train you, like just do some photos or whatever, little horse trades. So I probably will end up working out with some of them.
So you just work out with Damon, but you do photos for everybody? Like that's a partnership for like the photos is with the gym itself? I do the photos
for the gym. Yeah. Right. So I do photos. I take photos of like clients and trainer interactions, the equipment, because they have equipment that you don't really see at other gyms and stuff like that. So yeah, basically anything that goes on in the gym is I take photos of, and then it's for the vault, and then the individual trainers all have their own pages. Right. And so they can share the photos off the vault or whatever.
And if they want to contact you to do pictures specific with them, they can, and that relationship has already been built because they know who you are, you know who they are.
Well, and I've already taken photos of them and stuff like that, so probably will do some sessions with some of them. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So,
how long? That's pretty recent that you started doing that. Hey, a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's only been a couple weeks. But
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. They actually reached out to me, and it was a really cool opportunity, and just cool to meet a new group of people and people that are highly motivated people, which is what I need in my life right now, because I am busy. I mean, I work full time and I'm busy at work right now. I've been trying to hire somebody, which I did hire somebody. So this week, hopefully it'll be a little bit better, but
isn't hiring fun?
Yeah, it's my least favorite job.
It's not fun. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember every time when I was like working full time doing like lots of hiring, every time someone would quit, it was like, each time someone quits is different. Sometimes it's like, oh, thank fucking God. But like very rarely does that happen. Most of the time it's like, oh, that sucks. Like it sucks to lose a person. But like the first thing goes to your head is,
I gotta
hiring is gonna suck.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It seems like it's getting worse. Like over the 4 years I was hiring, I found, and maybe it was COVID that kind of messed with that, but like it seemed like nobody wants to work. And like people are just like coming in to show up for interviews. they seem great, and then you go to hire them and they just don't show up on the day they're supposed to start. And like,
oh really?
We were having crazy trouble with getting people hired. And I don't know if it's just like everyone's sitting on EI, they just have to make it shown that they went for interviews and stuff to not get kicked off. But man, I was getting very frustrated with it.
I've been lucky. I mean, I definitely did experience that at my last office, just because I did a lot more hiring there, and did experience. I don't think I ever had anybody that didn't show up, but people that didn't work out, and it was very obvious. It seemed all great in the interview, and then it's very obvious within like the first week. But yeah, I honestly can't say that it's because I've had bad experiences with it. I just don't enjoy it. I don't know. It's just like we said, those things that you just put off, where you're just like, oh, I just don't want to have to do that. Like, I just want to just do my regular job. But yeah, so I'm glad that that's done with. Yeah. But between that, between working full time and then doing photos. So I'm doing photos at the gym all the time. And then I'm taking on a couple different clients. So I'm taking on a few different clients, kind of just people that I know, to do sessions. And then, the blog, and trying to kind of get constant with posting on social media and all that stuff. So I need to be around motivated people. But you know what is the really interesting thing that I have found in the last couple weeks is I am busier than ever. I am doing more productive things than ever. Yeah. And yet somehow I feel like I have more time than ever. Yeah. Like, I used to be home in the evening and feel like the evening just flew by and I got nothing done. Yeah. But now, like, I get a full session edited, or, it's just, I don't know where this time came from. I caught traction. I'm just in the groove, which is, and it fuels it, right? Because then you feel productive with how you're spending your time. And then, that just makes you want to be more productive.
I remember that feeling.
Don't say that.
So fondly.
I don't want to turn out like a lazy bum like you in 8 months.
I know, exactly. I mean, and I don't mean to pull it down, but I remember that so well, of like when I first started the podcast, of like kind of being at a point with work where I was a bit overwhelmed with like what was going on. It was like the start of COVID, so like it was already tough. Like, we were going through some big changes, and like some really big things need to be taken on. And I just felt like I was the only one that could, which, again, a lot of the time this is in my head, and I will fully establish that this might not be the truth, and this might be just how I was seeing it, because you only see things through your lens, and maybe it wasn't this way, but it felt like some really big change needed to happen. I was the only one capable of doing these. I have to do all this stuff. Now COVID's happening. You have all these rules. Everyone's just going to work from home. It was up to me to figure out, okay, we can't work from home. Like, it's just not going to work. We need almost every member of staff, other than like the ones that work in like the stores, because the stores are closed down, need to be working from the office. How do I do this? What do I come up with? And I had to come up with like ways of like partitioning, and like coming up with ways for paperwork of like transfers, like building like mailboxes where you drop the mailbox outside here so nobody actually enters any buildings. The drivers, get ready, just go in their trucks. The paper will be waiting for them. Like, we had to overhaul everything. And I was kind of getting to this point where I was overwhelmed by that, right? And feeling like I just don't have enough time. And then I started the podcast, and I was now doing all that plus more, plus a podcast. And it felt like but you were just so motivated and doing so much that it felt like you had more time. And like the things I accomplished in like, I don't know how many months that period of time lasted, but like, I almost look back with disbelief of like, did that actually happen? Am I making that up? Like, am I
just with how much you were doing?
Yeah. And like, and
it doesn't add up.
And not even like how much, but like just like the amount of really big things that like we accomplished, and like, it was wild. And then now to not be quite feeling in that same spot, to know that I've done that once gives me a lot of faith that if I can find that place again, like the things that I can do, right? And like just catching, I loved the way you started this spot. Like, I caught traction. Yeah. I love like as soon as you said that, I clicked like, oh, that's exactly like,
put some chains on your tires.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it is. Like, throw some chains on. And and nobody likes chaining up. That's so funny.
No one likes chaining up.
Every driver fucking hates chaining up.
But then there you go.
But that's what you need. If you want to get up that hill, you got to chain up.
Yeah, you get a little dirty. You do the thing you don't like, and then all of a sudden you got traction. You're going.
Yeah, and like, it is nice to know that I will get to that point at some point again. But it's just knowing it's not. Yeah. It's not.
You're more than capable of it, and I'm totally kidding about the lazy bum. But also, I feel like you and I talk a lot about intuitiveness and kind of knowing what you need at a specific time, and that there are some times in your life when you need that. And, you know, actually I got a message from somebody after my blog this week.
Yeah.
And one of the comments that was kind of said was, it's so inspiring, just like how you just are going and everything that you're doing. And it was from somebody that had gone through a breakup, actually resonated kind of with that portion, and said like, I know that I need to just like get back out there and get going, but I just like want to stay in my safe place. And I said, yeah, absolutely. But also it's okay to need to be in that safe place, or to be in that, be a little stagnant, or be a little, not stagnant, be a little still. Because sometimes you do need that. And as long as you don't stay there too long and know when it's time to get out of there, that also like you kind of have to honor that too. So maybe you're just in one of those. Yeah.
And that's, I think, where like, that's the part I'm approaching where I know that it's okay. And like when I'm going through, like, it makes sense to me. Like I have no real qualms about it. It's how it comes across to everybody else that I'm worried about, which I know I shouldn't worry about at all. Right. It's so silly. But even for myself now, it's approaching like, okay, it's been a while. You're kind of getting to the end of where that is okay. And like now I'm starting to not be okay with it too, which is probably a good sign.
That's a tipping point, is when you stop feeling good about it, then you know it's time to make a move.
Again, it's one of those tough things where you're trying to judge how much of it is it me not being okay with it, and how much is it not liking the feeling of the people around you not being okay with it. Right. Which is an interesting dynamic, because like that's always a tough thing to, like, in the best of times, that's always a tough thing to distinguish. Like, is this for me, or is this for other people? Right. I think that's probably one of those truisms that is going to be true throughout your whole life in some way or another. Like, are you doing this for yourself? And like something you should always be asking yourself. But yeah, I think it's getting to that point with the best judgment I can make. I think so.
Well, you and your new producer are going to just hit a stride here.
That's the hope. That's the hope. And like, this is to know, like, I'm not doing everything I can, but just the thing of like, I can make myself this promise is like, now going forward, I want to make sure, unless something catastrophic goes wrong, I want to make sure I have video for it, because that's a huge thing holding me back, not having that. If I can do that, that's a step forward, right? And to stay consistent on like the Oilers podcast and stuff, which me and Chase have been somewhat consistent.
You guys are highly motivated on that one.
Yeah, I think so. But even still, like, there's been times where we probably should have like struck with Aaron's hot and like do an episode, but then we're like, you know, because we were like, we're going to do an episode after every game. And I was like, okay, we'll do one after the road series in LA. And then it's like, okay, we'll do one like for the last 3 games of the series, right? Which is still doing it more than once a week. We're still doing more than what, like, the once a week we had set out to, but like still not exactly what we said, right? And it's just tough with, you know, he's got to work and you know, we're both doing stuff and booking other podcasts and stuff to kind of fit it in. It's not as easy as we would have hoped it could have been, right?
Yeah.
And also, we're just both kind of lazy guys that don't want to, I think neither of us wants to really put pressure on the other one, because we're so laissez-faire with how we do things, just like whenever that.
That's how I am too. I'm like, if you want to, like, if you don't, no problem. But if you do want to.
That's me booking this podcast, Jayde. Do you know how many people back out on this podcast because I'm exactly like, if you want to, like, no pressure, like, you can completely back out. I almost like serve it up for them, pave the way for them to back out on me, and then I'm like, fuck, four guests back out.
To back them
exactly,
to back out.
Which is like, I want nothing more, but like the only thing I want less than for them to back out is for them to feel pressured into it.
Yeah.
Because like, and I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, this might be beating a dead horse, but like, just the thought of how much I love this and what this thing means to me, to like ever feel like I was pressuring someone to come on would be so offensive to me, like just spiritually, of like, no, this is an amazing thing. Like, I think I mentioned this, but maybe we didn't mention enough, like how amazing that felt the first time I had you on, when you were taking it so serious and you were thankful that I was having you on. You came up with like questions before you did work. Like you showed me that it meant a lot to you to come on like that. And I know that eventually, if I stay this path, that is going to become every guest, where they're all going to be excited to come on. And like, I'm excited for that, but just to get like a taste of that meant so much to me. I was like over the moon. And I think at the start you were worried about like bugging me with it. Like, you're like, oh, like, sorry if this is too much, like that, I'm doing this work. I'm like,
yeah,
no,
I'm like, sorry, I'm nerding out, but like, like, I just kind of wondering like what you're like,
yeah. But like, that meant the world to me. I love that. Like that.
And I think everyone feels like that, but I mean, like we kind of said earlier, people don't know how to express it or don't know how, like, you know?
Yeah. And also, I think this might have been off the podcast talking about it, but like, I do recognize that this is kind of a nerve-wracking thing for people. And that's why that's another reason I don't want to pressure them. Like, I don't want you to do it. If it's too scary for you on that day, like, I would encourage you to push past that fear, because I promise everybody, and like, it's been true for 140 some episodes now, that as soon as you get started, it's not that scary. It's scary for the first 5 minutes, and then it's just a lot of fun. And it's like, so like, I should pressure people a little bit, because I am confident you're going to have fun, but like, I don't want to. I think it's also because I know myself and how much I hate that. Like, if anyone pressure me, like we talked about, like we were talking about before, about like making plans, and how like you were saying, like when you make plans, you're always worried about like, oh, what if something else comes up better? And you're never that person to ditch a plan you've already made for something better, and you're always going to do that, but you're going to feel a way about it. And I said, like,
that makes me sound so bad. Don't say that on
Oh,
here.
come on. I told you that in confidence.
Yeah. That was over lunch.
Yeah, come on. Oh, great lunch, by the way. Great place. Great place.
Yeah, shout out Buko.
Oh, that place needs a return visit. But where I was going with that, of like what I said was like, I'm not that person. If I'm going to cancel, it's because I don't want to be there, because like, I always have big ideas of what I want to do, but I'm kind of an introvert. Like, I kind of just want to be by myself a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And I make these plans with all these full intentions of wanting to go there, and then it gets close to that date, and then I don't really want to do it. And if I could have gone back, I probably wouldn't have. And then you're saying, then you go there anyway, because that's who you are, and you probably don't like it as much. But I know that's not true with myself. Once I'm there, I have a great time, and it's all in my head the majority of the time, right? And I don't know why I can't get over that, of like, just realize if you go, like my family knows that, like, just go, you can have a good time once you're there. Like, they know me better than I know myself, but I can't, for some reason, make that stick in my head and just believe it.
So then it's hard for you to tell that to a guest when it's like something that you don't like really believe or practice yourself.
Exactly. Right. Like, I would never,
tell somebody like, oh no, just come, even though you don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that would be very offensive to me, of like what is actually like meaning and like valuable to me.
Yeah.
Right? And if someone did that to me, I would be so mad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just that feeling, like, even when it's just like being pressured, like,
see, where that wouldn't bother me at all. I would be like, you know what? Thank you for like pushing my boundaries a little bit. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
I like a little tough love every once in a while.
Yeah. I don't know. Because like, I even remember being like pressured into like going to parties in university and stuff when I didn't want to go, or just wasn't feeling. Yeah. I hated it. And most of the time I wouldn't go because I would dig my heels in and like, oh, you're telling me what to do?
You're
like,
more stubborn than the fact that you really didn't want to go.
Yeah. Like, and once people try and force me, that's when I really dig my heels in, right?
Yeah.
Like, something about being told what to do. And like, it's funny because Courtney is the same way, like, just like the nicest human ever, but we both have a real healthy fucking dose of don't tell me what to fucking do. You know what I mean? And like, that manifests itself in so many areas. Sometimes it's not even being told what to do, but somehow how I digest it, it feels like don't tell me what to do. And then I'm immediately got my kung fu arms out, right? I'm ready to fight.
Yeah.
Because like, it's like, don't tell me what to do. And it's like, I'm not even telling you what to do. I'm giving you like advice, but like, if anything even smells a hint like telling me what to do, I really don't respond well, which is great with authority. It's great for school. It was great for working in a corporate environment. It was great for all these things. I'm being very sarcastic if you can't tell.
Well, some of it is good. It's good that because I would say that I am like so passive that I can be like a pushover that way.
Right. Yeah. And you are right. It serves me amazingly well with how I live my life. Like, within the corporate environment, it got me in trouble a lot, but I only did it when I really felt like I needed to. And I would, again, stand by everything I did. And I think that's what was needed. I think a lot of time in that corporate environment, nobody does that. So then things just kind of go on. Oh, this is just how we've done things, and nothing changes. And you kind of march towards the cliff with nobody sticking their hand up because nobody wants to say something.
Right.
I stuck my hand up every time and said something every time, which isn't the greatest for just keeping your head down and moving up the ladder per se, but it gets shit done, and it gets, it moves you in a better direction in the long term, but it's not as smooth.
Yeah.
Right? And I would say that
I would say that's the path to a leader.
Exactly. And that's always the thing that I valued most, was like leadership. And that's where I think what was tough for me to go from was being a boss with 60 to hundreds, like depending on like which part of the business you're looking at, of people that can go out and do what needs to be done and I can lead, to now being a one-man army with like, I'm a leader with no team, right? And that's why it's so exciting to get in produce, because I feel like that is my strongest suit, is like coaching and leading and doing that type of thing. And I have nobody to lead and nobody to kind of work with. And I know that's going to change over time, and I'm going to build that. And that's what I'm really excited for, because like, if I had a team of 3 or 4 people that could like take all those crazy dreams I have and just like, okay, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And that would be so motivated. That is exactly like what gets my blood going, because now it's accountability too. When I'm just accountable to myself, I will come up with all the excuses as soon as other people are involved and I'm accountable to them.
I never
want to let them down. I let myself down all the time. And I think it's the flip side of having so much love for myself and who I am that I always can find that and not
give yourself a reason why it's okay that you did.
Exactly. But to other people, I can't. Like, if other people are involved, I can't. Right. Like that's why when I worked, I was never just like I just, didn't show up for a day of work or something. That's just not happening. Other people count on me, right? Like I'm just not ever going to just miss a meeting unless I forget. I'm kind of forgetful. That might happen, but it happened very rarely. Like I'd figure it out. But then in this new venture where I'm only accountable to myself, completely different story, which I didn't really foresee. I kind of had inklings of it, but I didn't think it'd be that bad.
Right.
Yeah. But then you get into it and oh, well, that's just something I got to learn and figure out how to do.
It's good that you share too. And I mean, for anyone listening to this podcast that is a creative and is looking to start some sort of creative venture, I think it's good I think a lot of the stuff out there is you see everybody's success stories and everyone's wins. And I mean, that's what people post about and share. But I think it's good that people can also hear like the struggles of figuring it out too. So that like, when you're struggling with something or things aren't going right or it's just not how you planned, you're not like, oh my God, why am I failing at this? It's like, oh no, like we all do that. And I think that's again, like one of the things that I want to do with this blog and this platform is just like, it's okay to showcase your struggles. It's okay to not just like look at everything through rose-colored glasses. It's okay to be proud of those things. It's okay to, wing it sometimes. And like, that's so my MO. And I think maybe too that, I haven't always felt maybe celebrated for being not so type A of being super organized. I mean, like you said, I mean, I've had very professional jobs and things where like you have to be organized and things too. I'm not just like a total wingnut, but I think that I definitely grew up in a family where my parents are very type A and very organized, very on time, like very have their shit together, which like I have so much respect for, but I am not that person all the time. And like, I'm always just kind of rolling with no plan, but you know what? That's intentional. I like living like that.
You got a wild side.
Yeah. Like I love the life that I experienced by doing that. I love the things that I've gotten to do or the conversations that I've had because I was off track on a plan or ran late or whatever. So I enjoy living like that, but it's definitely something that hasn't been celebrated in my family necessarily when it's like, fuck, we have to tell Jayde that dinner's like a half hour early because she's going to be rolling in late. And I think that's something that I'm excited to kind of share with this platform is like, that's actually okay. And you can have a great job and you can be professional. You can have great relationships and people that really count on you, even if like your life doesn't look a certain way.
Yeah. And it's funny because I can only speak for myself, but I would feel quite confident to walk out on this limb for a few other people in your life that is close to you. But like what we love most about you is that wild side. Like that's our favorite part about Jayde, right? Like whereas, like I totally hear when you say that. I'm like, oh yeah, within like a family dynamic where other things, like just the value systems, like that value systems flip, but like with the people that you surround yourself with, like your friend group, like that's the best part of you. So, but it's funny because I feel very similar. I think I just did a podcast. I was very vulnerable about some of these things about like my value system, what I value. And like, even though I surround myself with people that I get tons of feedback that value exactly those things, like Chase, like he comes up a lot, but like me and him have a very similar value system of like whatever the funniest thing is. And like, I get tons of validation from him. And like, I have all these other type of people that I get tons of validation from, but if it doesn't come from a certain, like, you want it from certain people. And if you don't get it from them, it doesn't matter how many thousands of people you get it from, right? Like it only matters when you get it from certain people, which is maybe not the healthiest thing. And maybe that's just a point in our lives where we are both at like this age where we're working through that. And maybe a later part in our lives, we will have completely left that behind and everything comes from within, all that validation. We're not looking to anybody and hopefully, but like I can just speak for myself at this point. It is not. And even though I get that validation from a lot of people and that's awesome, it still bugs me that I don't get it in certain places.
Yeah. I feel like I've come leaps and bounds with it. Just of, And I think, yeah, like I keep saying this, but it's just so new to me and so revelationary to like, that it's just like when you really like who you are and you're confident in who you are and like your heart and then it's like, okay, well, this is who I am. And so everything that I'm naturally doing is a part of me and a part of that person. And I like that person. Yeah. So that's okay. Like that's just a part of me and it's part of the whole. And I think when you're acting in like your true authentic self, that it makes things so much easier for me in a lot of ways of where I used to be like, strategize, let's say, like kind of strategize through like moves in life or like, what should I say here? Or should I do something or should I blah, blah, blah? Like, and always kind of think, oh, well, what would people want me to do? Or what would this person or whatever? And now I'm just like, okay, well, I like Jayde. So like, we don't need to think about that stuff because like whatever Jayde decides that she's going to, if she decides she wants to say something, then she's going to say something. That's the right thing. And if she decides she's going to do this, like, I just don't second guess it anymore. And I think, like with that, I think I am like coming leaps and bounds of being okay with that, whether I get validation from certain people or no one or whatever. I'm just like, nah.
So I'm curious because I would imagine this would change for you of like that checking in with other people would think and that you lived a couple different lives, it seems like, right? Like your Slave Lake life was very one way and you came to the city and you lived kind of a city life for a bit. And now I feel like the Jayde is in front of me now is some sort of hybrid between the two. And you've taken the lessons from both. I'm wondering like at the different stages, like when you're in your Slave Lake stage, who are those people that you were most like concerned about, like what they think about it, like that you're checking in with? Who was it when you came to like the city and who was like that influence there? And then now it sounds like you're trying to make that just you. But like, who are maybe the remaining people once you've gone through living the Slave Lake side, the Edmonton side, and now you're trying to listen to nobody, but like, you're always going to have some people's input, but we've probably pared that down to the bare minimum. I'm curious how that changed, if you're willing to share that.
Yeah, no, good question. I think easy no-brainer when I was living in Slave Lake, so that was 0 to 25 was when I moved away, was my parents all the time. My parents I love my parents. They're two very successful people. I look up to them immensely. And I mean, as anyone does with your parents and kind of what your parents, you grow up thinking like, okay, well, if your parents tell you something, then that must be right. Yeah. And so then kind of not fitting with like what felt. So then when I kind of started getting a little bit older and finding more of myself and connecting with different people and kind of the things that felt really good to me weren't necessarily things that they could understand. Yeah. Not saying that they were like against them, but weren't necessarily the things that they could understand. Yeah. And so then it's like, well, shit, like you don't really get that. Like, oh, well, am I veering wrong then kind of without that?
Yeah. It doesn't feel wrong, but the signals I'm getting, the feedback I'm getting.
Say that it's wrong. Yeah. And so it's definitely my parents. And then I think moving to Edmonton just made, I mean, I owned my own, when I lived in Slave Lake, I owned my own home. Like I don't know why it changed when I moved to Edmonton, just the physical distance, but something about moving here, I just kind of was like, all right, well, we're breaking free. Yeah. And started kind of just not worrying so much about that. I mean, obviously I care so much about what my parents think. I always want my parents to be proud of me. And I think they are, I hope so, but just kind of worrying less about the little things. Are they proud of me kind of as a whole and not focusing on like each individual little thing. And then, coming into Edmonton with like really no friends here, meeting all new people. I was just looking for validation with everybody around me because I had never... I'd had the same friends growing up, the same people. I had just never experienced it. I didn't know how to be single. I didn't know how to, So what I saw around me and what people seemed to like in other people, I just kind of tried to go along with and kind of mold myself into that.
Full chameleon?
Yeah, because I was just, one, I'm a people pleaser, but two, I was just like, all right, like I've never done this before. So I'm just like taking kind of cues out of everybody's book. Yeah. And then kind of hit to a crashing point with my mental health which I talked about on the last podcast of just kind of when you're not being yourself and your mind's kind of playing that avatar and till you finally crash. And it's just like, we're not doing this anymore. Like, we can't be this character that you're trying to play. It's just too hard.
Or these 10 different characters you're playing, whichever is required of you. Yeah,
exactly. And so then, I really kind of closed my circle, went within, didn't close my circle. Definitely, I always have like my circle of people from Slave and my family and, you know, certain people, but spent a lot of time on my own and just did the work and figured out who I am and built that confidence. And now it's really me. And I mean, maybe my closest friends, because after I kind of strayed a bit and wasn't maybe being fully fair and authentic to myself, they let me do that. And when I kind of crashed and had some conversations, they said, you know, like, we saw a few things, but like, you had to figure it out on your own. You had to experience that. Like, we support you 100%. Like,
and those are good friends.
Yeah. And they're like, it's not like you were being totally different than yourself, but just like little things that, and, they're like, but you had to do that. And so that definitely made me realize just how much they know me and how much they are really on point with what's going on. Like, if they think that something's up, like, it's up. Yeah. Because they know me in and out. They know how I think of it, like how I think, how I feel, what's triggering to me, like what happens when I load my plate too full. Like, they're so I value so much kind of the four of them, their opinions on things. And I don't need their validation, but I definitely check in a lot because they can just look at it from the outside looking in, but it's as close to me looking at myself as anyone else. Yeah. So.
Which is a huge tool to have. And I think that's where, I think I just listening to that, I need to take advantage of that more. I struggle with doing that. I know I have the people in place that I should be doing that with, but for some reason I have such a hard time taking into account other people's thoughts on things because I hold my own in such high esteem that, like, even though people probably do have a good foundation to stand on to give me advice in certain areas, a lot of time I don't take it because I don't know if it's ego or what it is, but I just, you know, like, I know better all the time. And I've had that for a long time. Like, that was probably a part of the don't tell me what to do. Yeah. You know, like that is part of what I struggled with in school, of like trying to listen to certain teachers that I didn't maybe think earned the right to stand at the front of the class type of thing. And like, that's just like, it's funny to look back on because in the moment you don't think anything of it. You're a kid, right? But then like to look back on it, like, I was a little menace in that. Like, I almost like, I'd be so curious. It was fun to have Mr. Fisk on the podcast and talk to him about it a little bit, just because like he was one of my favorite teachers, and like to talk about it, like, man. And like, maybe we talked more off the pod. I don't know if we actually covered this on the podcast. Like I said, I never remember anything of what was said or not said on the podcast or off. It's all the same to me. But like, I kind of mentioned, I was like, man, like, I feel like probably 90% of the teachers hated me. And Fisk is like, no, like, I don't think I know one. Like, they all loved you. And I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, because like, I was not easy on those poor people. And like, looking back, some of them are probably like 25. 24, like just stepping in that role, just as lost, like out of university as like who I was a couple years ago. I'm like, man, those poor people. Like, what I was putting them through this little, not violent, that's the wrong word, but just like ball of fury that is just mad at the injustice of the world and like anything
challenging a lot around you.
That like probably didn't need to be challenged. They probably didn't need that in their life, but I was going to be that guy. I was going to challenge everything, right? Like, it's silly.
I think it's like really good to be so self-sure. I think, it's not something I've ever struggled with, but I think it's huge, but also just, to recognize that like we all have blind spots. Yeah. And sometimes it takes, having really good people in your life that see it and let you do it anyways. Right. And then when you come back and go like, holy shit. And they're like, not I told you so, but like, so maybe next time, like we'll hear what people are saying. We won't do that again.
Yeah. and you're right. That is a skill, because I think me doing that all the way through, you know, like kindergarten through grade 12 of like always being that person. I'm so glad I did that, because when I got to university, I saw how easy it was to just be indoctrinated into exactly what they want to think. And if I hadn't done that, and even still, I almost did. Like after that first year, until I went back to Slave Lake and realized, like, man, who did I just become over this? Like, I was just like completely into that university mindset of like how they want you to think and like don't question anything else. This is like what you have to think. Like, you know, it was just so wild that I'm
Plus
so
you were in the dodgeball cult.
Oh no, the dodgeball cult is what saved me, Jade. That's exactly it. Like I was in like the residents, like Lister Hall Students Association, like cult of inclusivity and like word police. Like you can't say that word. And like
you were a word police?
100%. When I came back, like I was fully indoctrinated. This is what I'm saying, which probably amazes you.
Yeah.
But that's how indoctrinated it is. It sucks everybody in. And then but then like a couple of people from like the dodgeball cult was like, hey, you're going down the wrong path. You're not that person. This is what you need to do, because this dodgeball thing that everybody loves is being completely torn down and isn't going to be what it is and what it's meant for so many people. If people like you don't step in and dig your heels and kind of hold it for what it is and don't let it just be taken over by this, you know, because if it was up to them, you couldn't have that dodgeball thing. Part of the dodgeball was having, you know, a certain amount of men and women on the court. In the university, if they had their say, you can't even say men and women are different. Like the whole idea of like what that dodgeball league was completely opposed, but everyone loved it so much they kind of turned a blind eye to it. But they were scratching at the door all the time. It was up to like the dodgeball cult to keep them out and to say, hey, everybody loves this. We're all fine with it. Nobody's being hurt here. Everybody loves this. Like just stay the fuck away. And then as soon as like it kind of went down that rabbit hole, and it's
interesting.
Sadly, not what it used to be. It's still there, but like, yeah, like they used to have like, we could have like nicknames on the back of like whatever you wanted. Like it'd be like there was like cum cupcake and like cum dumpster and like just, and usually they're like not as bad as they look. Like it's just a funny name to put on the back of a jersey, and it like usually has some like innocuous story of someone like got like blacked out a bar and did something stupid and like,
right.
But it was so much fun and like everyone loved it so much, but the university hated it, rightfully so. I'll give them that one. That was like one of the most reasonable ones that they were upset about. But just things like that. Like I've told this story on the podcast before. Every year we did this all-star tournament. Every tower had their team, and everyone liked to do something else. Like the tower I was in first year, Kelsey, they would do red mohawks. All the guys would shave their hair into mohawks and dye them red. The girls would put like a streak in their hair. That was a big thing. Commitment, right? Nobody was forced into it, but they said, so my year said, you can't do mohawks. It's hazing. It's
culturally.
It's hazing.
Oh.
They said it's hazing because if somebody didn't want to get the mohawk, they'd feel pressured into it. We said, not everybody's going to do it. Like we can sign waivers to say like, I want to do it. They would have none of it. They just said, no, this is what it was. And that's what I hated about the university. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't proving points where they actually were backing up what they're saying. They're just saying, this is what it is. This is hazing. No discussion to be had. We had to fight and go up through the ranks of these residence people that were fucking terrible people. I'm just going to say it. Fucking terrible people that literally were an RA on a floor, were the fucking floor police, and then they moved up and now they're an RC, and now they get to be the tower police, and they're just these people that do not deserve power, the worst people to have power, and they give them power, and then they just work for the university after, and these are the people we're going to try to have a reasonable conversation with, but they're so drunk on power they don't even want to hear it.
That's so funny.
So it finally got to the point, and again, apologies to people that have heard this story on the podcast already, but it got to a point where I'd gone as high as I could within the residence. We couldn't do it. So then one of the old dodgeball cult guy, like the leaders of the dodgeball thing, from the dodgeball sensei, came back, and he was like sitting on like a student board thing, like with the dean of students or something. He had some sort of in with the dean of students. So he's like, he's a reasonable guy. We'll talk to him. We go to his office and have a reasonable conversation with someone that had been in the real world that was actually going to see both sides. He's like, this is ridiculous what you've been put through. Force that lady she called her up and said, come to my office. She's like, oh, I'm kind of busy. Like, no, come right now. Made her walk all the way from Leicester to his office as dean of students. Was like, this is ridiculous. These people are going to get their haircuts. There's people not getting them. This is not hazing. You guys are completely overblown, and just let us have it. And it was like the greatest moment I've ever seen. It was such a, like I'd almost lost all hope in this stupid, but like it was so eye-opening to what the university was and what it was becoming. Because I don't think universities always were that. They were used to be somewhere where you'd go and like learn how to think, but it became, we don't want you to learn how to think. We want you to think this way, and there's no deviating from it. You have to think this way. And I just hated it. But if I hadn't been that person that was fighting with every teacher all the way up,
You wouldn't have noticed that.
I wouldn't have noticed it. It wouldn't have sat so terribly with me. It wouldn't have kept me up at night, and I just would have gone right into it, right?
Interesting. I wonder how I would have fared in that environment.
I don't know.
I actually was walking. I went for a walk. This is me like having zero plans ever. I went for a walk a couple weeks ago. It was like a nice day. And so I live downtown. So I started walking, like went across the high level bridge, ended up like walking all the way like down, like through the university and all the way to the Grout Road Bridge, like all the way to the point of no return. I was like, like
I gotta catch you to get home.
I got it. Yeah. I was like, that's it. Like we have we got no food. We got no water.
Our heads are falling off.
Literally.
I hear you.
But like just hadn't given it a thought or had a plan. Anyways, but it was my first time actually kind of wandering through the university campus. And I was like, oh, I kind of wish that I would have went here.
Yeah.
But now you make it sound like shit.
It was shit in certain ways, but it was also, but this is the tough thing to like describe. Like, it was complete shit, but it was the best 4 years of my fucking life. Like, I would not change for a thing. I loved it.
That's just life, isn't it?
Had so much fun, like learned so much, and like almost having that shit to rail against was exactly what I needed, right? Like,
it's good for the plot.
Good for the plot. That is like, of all the things of wisdom I've gotten from you, Jayde, I think that might have been my favorite piece.
That was on the pod.
Was it on?
I think it's recorded.
Oh, that was great. I've said that statement so many times now in my life. Fuck it, it's good for the plot. Like, oh, that's so great.
That just like is literally just shows like my nature and how I deal with things, which again, I don't know if it's the right way, but it's
your way.
It's my way.
Yeah.
And the girls in our little group chat or whatever, Mackenzie sent a TikTok and it was like me saying it is what it is after the most traumatic experience in my life that is literally not fine. Yeah. And she just sent it with like no caption. And Jamie's like, at Jayde. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
Because I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. I'm just like not going to get too riled. But also, flip side of that leaves me very much on the side to be easily influenced or pushed over in those kind of situations. But thankfully, I don't think I've really found myself in too many.
Do you think that is something that has like changed over time? Do you find you're less like easily pushed over or like influenced like as you get older and as like you've gone through all these crazy experiences in life? Do you find that that's like becoming less and less common?
I think that I'm less pushed over maybe, or like I think that I'm more firm in what I believe, what I think is right, who I am, but I remain or get more easygoing with age of like just like life passing through me.
Yeah.
And things not really riling me up or shaking me. Like I just kind of react to them in the moment, and I'm just like, well, I mean, it's not worth me ruining my day over. Like,
right.
I don't know.
Which I think is probably a natural thing of life, of getting older and becoming less attached to it.
Yeah. It's funny though, because like at lunch we were talking about something and I was like, it's fine. And you're like, well, it's not fine.
Yeah.
And like we kind of had like a little like, not battle, but back and forth where I'm like, but I mean like I've done like my thoughts on it and like, it's fine. I'm fine with it. And you're like, but are you though? Actually,
just because we'd had a similar conversation about the same subject where like we talked more on it where it really wasn't fine.
Yes.
Right. And like that was a couple weeks ago at this point, and you've clearly done work on that, right? Like since then, and maybe it was fine. It's just like, I just want to make sure, because you kind of skipped over to that's fine pretty quick on that one, where like when we conversed about this a couple weeks ago, it definitely was not fine. Yeah. So like,
that's just, my
let's take a pick stop here. And that's the thing I'm picking up. Like a lot of the time, I think that is one of your greatest strengths, is that ability. And I think that comes, it's that double-edged sword of having to go through such crazy shit in your life. But that's what you came out of it. That's the,
there's perspective there.
Yeah.
When you've been through like things that are worse, it just kind of, you're just like, oh, wow, this is actually okay.
And I would imagine like when you're in Slave Lake, so many people, it's such a small place. Everyone knows everything about you and they know all those things that you've been through.
Yeah.
And they don't just see the skills and the perspective that you come out with. Like they don't just see the good, they remember all the bad with it, and that's tainted through the view. And then you come to Edmonton and nobody knows any of the bad stuff. They just see the perspective and like who you are and like this easygoing person, but they don't know how you got there.
Yeah.
But now you started this blog where you're starting to talk about some of those things. And you can share. Like, again, probably too early in this, and maybe again, I'm sure we'll sit down again in a couple months and have this another similar conversation. But like, I wonder how that's going to change, like how you go about it, because you kind of get the best of both worlds. The people that care to want to know can know. you'll still have the anonymity, because not even if you become the biggest blog in the world, there's going to be a lot of people that don't know, and you still have that other side of it where they just see the what you've come out of it with. But now you're not completely stuck with having people not know all those things, because I don't know. Do you think if you, this is an interesting thought experiment.
Okay.
If you could either have the entire world know what you'd been through, like
just basically know like everything about your journey.
Yeah. Or nobody ever would ever know, what do you think you prefer?
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
Do, 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 do.
That's a toughie.
I think I would rather everybody know everything.
Me too.
Just because like I think that everything that I've gone through in my life and that I've done, I look back and I am proud of everything that I learned. I'm proud of who I became out of it. So I think I would rather be understood for that. And I think that there's certain ways that you can't understand a person and how they think and how they feel without that.
Right. And that's essentially what you're working towards getting to with like the blog. And like we said, it won't be everybody, but those that choose to can have enough perspective and enough understanding of what has built you into this person that you are today. Right. Because it's one thing people, like, I've really been pushing for you to meet Chase, right? Like
I know. Right? He actually invited me out the other night after the Oilers game. I was like, I have a photo shoot first thing in the morning. But
because like, I think you guys get along really good. Like I'm sure you guys are both like similar in a lot of ways. And I think you'd have lots of fun. But like where I'm going with that is like, even though Chase wouldn't know any of those things about you, he would still be able to see like an amazing person, and you get that. So you don't like need those things for someone to like to enjoy you and to enjoy being around you, but there is a level of understanding that can only be achieved through that, and it's nice to have that option there.
Yeah, I think it's a connection level.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, I don't know. Back to the blog and we will have to discuss, because I don't even know what I'm going to write about next week, and that's the beauty of it. But and that doesn't scare me at all. And I'm not even being sarcastic, but is it scary that if you do decide to really share and be vulnerable, that someone that really doesn't like you or doesn't respect you can go on and know you intimately in that way? A little. Yeah. But I mean, also I'm like, if you want to spend your time and like try to look for ways to hate me more, that's fine.
Yeah.
And really, I gotta say, like, I don't know, like with like, good luck, like, because the more I don't know, I just like the more I share about myself, I don't think that there's I mean, I feel like the way we're talking now, it's like there's all these dark secrets what, but I mean, like there's nothing, it's nothing bad or anything. It's so I think it's like the more you know about me, maybe you just know like kind of why I think and feel the way I do. But it's
I know that fear very intimately, right? Like the example I like to use is just like I'm very vocal about like my issues with like body image and like my weight and stuff, and like how much that has been a big thing that I've worked through. By talking about that, if there was those people out there that really didn't like me, I'm giving them a pretty easy attack vector to know what's going to affect me. And I would like to hope that if some random person attacked me with something, like if it was someone I know, and maybe I'd feel differently, but like that's never going to happen. Like the people that know me aren't going to do it, but like,
and people that don't like you just don't care enough to even like, they're not going to listen.
They wouldn't even listen to it to even know that. And that's exactly it. And this is what gives me confidence, is that even if they did listen to a 3-hour podcast in which I talk about some of those issues and why, you'd have to be a pretty fucked up person to not only realize it's attack vector, but then to get all the backup and to see how it affects someone, and then to choose to go like, I don't even care. Like, I'd almost want those people to attack me because I don't want to be around you. Yeah. Like you are a bad person.
You're on a nasty path.
Exactly. Which is similar to your blog too. It's not like they're just getting the ammo without the I don't know what the word would be, like the backup to it and like the reasons why that affects you, right? Like
yeah. So maybe there's a little, like you kind of said, it's a little bit, my blog's a little bit more easily digestible. So we'll have to see. It was one thing my mom pointed out and was like, I'm really surprised that like you want to share. And just because so many bad things can happen by sharing and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I was like, I'm not even thinking about those because I'm just thinking about all the great things. And I honestly, I'm not thinking about myself. That's the thing is like when I write this, like I'm not thinking about myself. I'm really thinking about that girl that is me from 3 years ago, sitting in her room, feeling so defeated, so lost, like so hurt, coming across something that goes, oh my God, she's just like me. And look at her. And she's happy. And listen, like, that's who I'm thinking about. And I don't know, maybe that's grasping, but like, I
don't think so at all.
That's what I'm thinking about because that's what I needed, wanted, found in some ways when I was in like really tough spots. And I don't want the blog to all be about like really tough stuff. I hope that sometimes it's light and fun and it's entertaining and whatever, but
and it has been, right? Like the 10 things you need to know about Jayde, like that was pretty light and fun and like it was quite enjoyable, right? Like they're all enjoyable, but like enjoyable in a different way where it's you know, light and fluffy.
Yeah,
we'll call it, right?
Well,
like,
you got to add a little fluff for sure so that it's not just like but
all the darkest shit that's ever happened to you.
Let me tell you. But so I mean, I'm just really not thinking about any and all effects this is going to have on me. Just I'm thinking about just reaching that one person.
In terms of like format of like kind of how you write, like just like the length of the blogs you're doing, right? And like the latest one you released, like just being your friend, I know that there was like that is 1% of 1% of the whole thing that you could have talked about, right? And you had to kind of to take that subject and put it into the format that you've chosen, kind of the length that you chose. That's what you did a really great job of kind of giving the overview of what it was, making it impactful, letting people in to a very big degree while also holding on to a lot and respecting everyone else within the situation's privacy.
Yeah. And you have to give manageable bites, I think.
Manageable bites.
To be able to touch people, it has to be easy. 100%. It has to be manageable.
Do you ever foresee in the future, like maybe even in a different spot where maybe you don't even call it a blog, where you just do like a short story is the wrong word for this, but like going further in depth, still within writing, still within that, and maybe it's not a blog because like that's easily digestible thing. Maybe, you know, eventually.
I would love to write a book one day.
Exactly.
I've always thought that. I don't know like what it would be. And what I would talk about. I don't know if it would be about me or anything, but writing a book is definitely something I've always been really, really intrigued by. Yeah.
Do you think, I guess you just kind of answered the question I was going to ask because you said you don't really know what you're going to ask. I was going to say like would you write like fiction or like real stories or like do you have any inkling? Would you want to do like
probably nonfiction?
Yeah.
Just because I don't know. Maybe that's just because that's like what I'm writing about right now.
I think I'm going to write a fiction book at some point in the future.
You should.
I have a bunch of ideas.
Yeah. I used to love writing fiction when I was younger.
Me too.
Little fiction stories.
I think that was one of my favorite parts. I think we might have even talked about this last time on the podcast, or maybe this is, again, we've talked so much in the intervening time between the podcasts and I don't remember what was and wasn't. I probably should have re-listened to it before this, but Mr. Mosher's class, those writing exercises of like writing those stories, like I used to have so much fun with that where you just like okay, you have 20 minutes, here's a picture, write a story.
Well, because it was either you could write, there was always the choice, either you could write an essay about like something that you read or you could write a story about a picture. I was always like, story about a picture, fuck yeah.
Yeah, me too. In the same way, and what I loved about it was Mr. Mosher's like, because he was a marker for those, what were those tests called? The ones you have every 3 years?
The diploma, like the provincial exams.
Yeah, the provincial exams that were grade 3, 6, 9, and 12. He was always the marker for them. And he would always say, do not, unless you are a really, really good story writer, do not write the story on the picture. And like he said, like every year, I maybe let like 2 or 3 students do it. Our years, like me, you, like maybe like a Hayden Zimmer or something who's like also like a very creative guy. I'd love to get that guy on the pod. Love me some Hayden.
My gosh, I don't think I've seen him since the day we graduated.
I haven't seen him in a long time, but like I messaged him every once in a while because we used to run, because me and Hayden were like best friends when we were really young. I don't know how many people remember that, because you remember that, like, but who remembers like, you know, grade like kindergarten to like grade 2, right? Like we used to be like age group. Like we used to be like very close, like. And I think for some reason, stuff like that, like still hangs, like I still think of him as like a close friend, right? Like, I don't know what he thinks of me, but like, you know, like if I saw him on the street, I'd give the guy a big hug, right? Like, I think
that's how I feel like I am with like pretty much anybody that crosses my path for any length of time.
Yeah. I don't even know. Why did I even bring them up? Anyway.
Creative stories.
Right. Writing stories.
Yeah.
That's where I get down my tangents like I do. But I love that. And honestly, like, that was such a point of pride too, to be one of those people that like
could do
to have like someone like him that was like, everybody kind of respected
his opinion
a lot.
He knew what he was talking about.
He knew what he was talking about. And for him to say like, your stories like mean something like that. Oh, like that's still like, I remember he had asked me one point, maybe he was just buttering me up. I don't know if he actually did this, but he said like, would you mind if I scanned some of your stories that you've written for examples for like future years? And I was like, oh, like I still remember that to this day. Like that was so meaningful to me of like, you know what I mean? Like just like the little things like that. After I just talked about the wars I went to with teachers, right? That wasn't 100% like Mr. Fist, Mr. Motor. Like there was a bunch of like really positive things too.
Yeah.
That I didn't. But that's the thing.
You had the respect for those
I respected
ones.
the fuck out of Mr.
You
Fist.
felt like
I respected
they had
the
earned.
shit. 100%.
Yeah.
Which is.
I mean,
right?
I don't know who you were to judge if a teacher had earned their skins.
Dude, exactly. That's where I'm coming from. I'm some kid.
Felt like those ones did.
Oh my God. And if they didn't, oh my goodness. I want to see if I can say it. I don't have to edit out the name, but I don't know if you remember. I'm trying to think of like a way I can tell you who I'm talking about without you getting there.
Oh, this is fun.
No, I don't think so.
I'm a good guesser.
Okay. There's a teacher that I had, I think it was probably like around grade like 8. He was only a teacher for like a couple years.
Okay.
Shorter guy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm narrowed in.
Yeah.
Did we have him grade 7? Was he our homeroom?
I think so.
Was he in the middle of like the middle classroom?
Yeah, I think so. And he taught gym like for like one semester, because this is where my story was. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
So like we would do gym, and like at the start of gym class, we would have to like just do like warm up laps. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, and then you do some like ab work and stuff. And like when we'd have Mr. Zimmer, Mr. Carlton, whoever else was our gym teacher, they would always do it with us.
Yeah.
And he would kind of do it with us, but then he'd always convene that to tie his shoe or like mark something off, and he never did it. And that drove me so wild that he couldn't even do that. I could not respect this guy or shit. And like we went.
You taught science, right? Yeah, I'm dialed right in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you might be thinking of two different guys. The one guy that taught science that I also got into mad fights with, and like my dad actually had to come into the school and have a chat with him. He was a big guy that taught science.
Yeah, that's different.
Different guy.
Yeah,
right.
I know who you're talking about.
Right,
I know all the people you're talking about.
Oh man, that was funny with him.
Do you have Guess Who? Can we play?
We should. Oh, somebody made this so off topic, but somebody created like a Guess Who board with
real people,
with MMA fighters.
Oh, okay.
So it's like so up my alley. But I saw them like playing. They had like a YouTube channel. And they started. They're doing. I was like, man, like just the idea of like just a base set of like. Oh, why would you even need base set? Do it on a computer where you just have like the virtual board and you put the pictures in. Like you do it like with your high school yearbook or something.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do it like
How
like
much fun would that be?
And then play.
Dude, or like
you have to have like kind of thick skin to play though.
For sure. This is not a game you play. Yeah. But like imagine you and the girls playing that.
Oh, it would be
absurd.
Silliness.
Okay, well, we got our $1 million idea after this. We'll just have to cut this out of the podcast. No one will hear this ever.
Well, I've seen other people do it, so.
Well, fuck those people, Jade. We're better. We'll do it better. We'll make millions.
We'll do it better. Okay. We'll patent it.
Where were we even going with any of that?
Just respecting teachers, yeah.
Moser, writing. That's what it was.
Yeah, writing, yeah.
So you're going to write a book. We made it back. No, maybe. You're gonna.
Well, I don't know. I will if I want to, and I won't if I don't anymore.
Okay, shit. That's a way better way to put it.
Yeah.
Why you got to one-up me like that, Jade?
Wow.
Just better? Just better in all ways. Oh.
Really smart.
You know what? Sometimes you're just better than other people. That's just how it is. You know.
You said it, not me.
You said it. Hey, you said it. So one of the first meteor blogs that you released was on like body dysmorphia, and I think we might have talked about that a bit, like in our first conversation stuff, and we've definitely talked about it, like just me and you after that.
Yeah.
And then I think I just read that one. I think that's one of the ones I just read this morning. So I hadn't like reached out to you, or like we haven't talked since then.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like to release that first kind of more like non-introductory, non-fluffy piece? How was that?
I love that one.
You love that one.
I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I released like the first 3, like all kind of in the first week. Cause I was like, I want people to kind of know what this is, like whatever. I love that one. It felt so true to me. It's really something that like I've recently just come out of and learned about. And then the responses that it was kind of the first time that I had gotten like really like responses. I mean, I'd gotten a lot of like, good for you for doing this, but then that was the one that like people responded directly to that blog and said, I've never thought about it this way, or I've struggled with this forever. Like, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for saying it this way. And I just love that one. And that's where I was like, okay, here we go. We can, the things that I'm thinking, other people are thinking too. And
I was kind of like blown away because we talked about it a lot. And like, I don't know why this hit me so much just reading it rather than in the conversations we've heard, but like of seeing both of us who have struggled with like body image issues, body dysmorphia, whatever you want to like label it as, but how it differently manifests. Like, I don't know, like it was so different from how I experience like my issues, like what I see of like you kind of seeing pictures of yourself and be like, is that what I really look like? Because you have this idea in your head of like just kind of like tearing yourself down. Whereas like mine is like completely the opposite of like, I always kind of had this idea, and this might be a male female thing of like, I always thought I looked, I kind of had a better version of myself, and then I would see myself and be like, oh, like Jesus, like is that actually what I look like? Which is the same issue, but flipped. And I was like, man.
In how it manifests. But it's the exact same issue that we're dealing with. And like when we've talked before, it sounded like it was identical. I think because we're probably talking about more so of like the effects on our life and how it's like impacted us, which is the exact same of like just the lack of confidence, the lack of just like there's certain things that anybody that has struggled with body image will relate to. But I was so blown away by how differently it was. Like that's interesting.
And I'm very curious to talk to more people about it and try and think, because I was guessing like, oh, that might be a male thing where it kind of have it in your head where like you're always like build it up like, oh, I'm a big, tough, strong guy, like whatever programming gets entered into you. And then to have that be jarred and you see going away from that, it gives you a complex of now you're always, because then I always had it in my head of like, every time I would think that, I would automatically be like, no, remember, you've seen yourself in pictures. You're not good looking, right? And then you reinforce that of like, be like, no. And you almost like kill that piece of yourself that is like that, like seeing yourself in the best light. Whereas for women, you're kind of always getting hit with program, you're not good enough. And there's always
you're walking around in the day thinking that.
Yeah. Like
thinking that when you pass a mirror and like just, all the time you're thinking it.
Man. And do you think that's universal to like all girls think that? Or do you think there's some girls that are just so like Megan Fox, whoever, pick your cultural icon that is just known for their beauty that like doesn't, or do you think even them, they think that stuff too?
I don't know. I mean, I can't speak to it because I don't know, but if I had to guess, no, you know what? I think that everyone has their things, maybe not to the certain extent. And I think it depends on like the work you've done on yourself and your thought process and stuff. Right. But you know, it's funny because I actually saw a thing of Megan Fox. She has a really unique looking thumbs. Oh, and people have kind of dialed in on that in the past year, which like, fuck, like just horrifying to me. Like, oh my God, like what if somebody, but I feel like maybe just people are just looking for a way to say like, hey, even the most beautiful, because there's nothing wrong with her thumbs. Like really, who cares what anyone's thumbs look like? But I think it's a way of people going, okay, even the most beautiful person in the world isn't perfect. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm sure she has had thoughts of that. And I mean, maybe people don't have it throughout their entire life, but I think everybody has a period of it. And I think that puberty and like that kind of age group is a lot tougher on women. So I would say it'd be tough to find a woman during that period that hasn't felt that way. But I think that and I hope that not every woman walks through life feeling that way, because I hope that now I don't walk through life that way. So I'm 27. I hope that for the rest of my life, I'm not a person that ever thinks that.
You know what I see as like the big switch of like that confidence of girls walking through the world a different way, and maybe it never goes away completely, but motherhood. For some reason, I feel like there's something that disconnects of like the value system of so much of your value system and everything you've seen in life shifts so much to your kids at some point that just drops off. But like the least give a fucks I've ever seen from women in that space is usually moms. And I love that. That is something like I'm just so in awe of it. And like the the person I think of the most with this is like this comedian, Christina Przitsky, who I've talked about a ton on this podcast. She has Where My Mom's At, which is like this mom podcast that I just love. She's a comedian, so it's hilarious as fuck. And you learn a bunch of stuff about parenting and like, you know, labor and all these. Like I was blown away by how little I understood that whole realm. But like just to see how much like she's changed, like the glow that she, and like just how she sees herself so differently from it. It's like, wow, like that's impressive. And like, just like an interesting thing of like, it's a side effect. Nobody's going to have a kid just purely so they like feel good about how they look. Like that is completely non-related, but it's a nice little byproduct. If that's accurate, I'm completely taking shots in the dark.
Again, I can't speak to it because I've never, but I would say there's a percentage that maybe that
For
happens.
sure.
There's a percentage where you just are so focused on other things that you're not focused on that. But I would say that after having kids is a really tough thing for women in their bodies.
Imagine that. I
love everything that you're saying, and I wish that was the thing. And I do think like a lot of women are like, you know what, like like I don't give a fuck if my hair is done and whatever. Like I totally get that.
As soon as this
you're focused
releases,
on your kid, but
I'm gonna have I can picture 4 different girls from my friends who are going to give me a huge smack in the face from this.
What are you talking about?
I'd be like, what the fuck? We've had this conversation. You know how much I've like struggled in the last couple.
Yeah. I would say it's really
apologies to you. Yeah. I wasn't thinking that through. I was thinking in the moment.
Yeah. You can cut it out if you want.
You're right. Fuck that. They know. They know.
Yeah. No, I think that's really tough for women.
For sure it is.
Just like you have to be able to look at it as like your body does an amazing thing. But I'm not looking forward to having to see my body do that.
I'm still laughing at us. What a stupid thing that was to say. Why didn't you stop me? You're just sitting there like, oh yeah, all right.
I mean, hey, I want to see where you went with it.
Hey, yeah, well.
I'm open to any take on it. And I hope that comedian, that is genuinely how she feels.
Yeah. And I think now that I think about that, I think that's way more just who she is more than like standard. And also she didn't really give too many fucks about what she looked like. She was just a like
so there you go,
badass punk ass bitch who went through crazy shit growing up. Like just had, her mom was like certifiably crazy. Her dad was like just both immigrants, like Eastern European, like just like lived a crazy life. And she got raised in like a crazy life in LA and like, but is like one of like my biggest female heroes. Like I have, right. But I feel like that is maybe
second
not
to me, right?
Second to you. Of course. That's why I said one of course. But like, I don't know. Where was I going with all that? Looking through, the blog. So that was the first one that you got some real like hefty response to. Did that make you more eager to like keep going down into like the depths of like the bigger things you wanted to talk about? Did that change?
That definitely gave me like, okay, here we go.
Yeah,
we can talk about real things. People want to hear real things, and here we go.
That's great.
Yeah. I feel weird speaking like too much on any, just because it's so fresh. Like I feel like I've barely even started, like, but just built myself a website, but
just built yourself a website.
Yeah. That's been my experience so far. And I'm really, really excited to where I can take it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have so much more to talk about. And
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that's where I'm curious, because I know that you have so much more to talk about, but then also with what you already have talked about, you only scratch the surface too. So I'm very curious of like, is that how far you want to go with it? And that's like where you're going to leave them? Like, and you don't know that.
I don't know either, but I see myself, and that's it. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that is something that in my past, like it was with a project or doing anything, it was like, okay, well, unless I have it planned out perfectly, like I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And I think that could have been that's a real way to really stunt yourself in doing something creative like a blog, because if I said, okay, like I want to make sure that I write about body dysmorphia, I'm only going to write it about it one time, and I have to make sure that I include everything. Well, that thing never would have got published, because I'd always have it sitting there like, oh, I could say this better. Oh, I could talk more about this. But I'm just going, no, you know what? I can revisit topics. If I talk about something and I kind of mention one thing and maybe I get some messages and people are interested in that, then I go, okay, well, maybe like I'll talk some more about that. And I think that's the thing, just like your podcast, it's like I can always go back. I can always elaborate more. I can always talk about more. And so no, I wouldn't say if I release something and it seems like there's more underlying, it's not because I don't want to share it. I think it's just because maybe it's not the right time, or maybe it's just like I don't want to just give a bleh. Like I want,
you want to be concise.
I want it to be digestible. I want it to be yeah, we have time. I think that's like with readers. I'm like, we have time together.
Yeah.
Like
and that shows a confidence too, that you don't need to get everything out, because you do know like this is something I want to do for a while, and I'm confident that it's going to be where I want it to be. And then it kind of takes away a bit of that fear too of like what you talked about earlier of, do I talk about some of these subjects now while it's fresh, or do I wait till I have a bigger audience too? It doesn't matter, because you can always go back and you can revisit, and you'll be in an even better place to talk on those with like the extra life experience you have at that time to cover it.
Build on it.
Yeah. So then the body dysmorphia was the big one. And then you kind of, got into, I think maybe more of what we talked about on the first podcast. I think we did just like the breakup, moving, like kind of like going through some of the biggest moments of your life. Was that one scarier, less scarier than the body dysmorphia one? Because it might, I don't know, you'd have to tell me like where do they rank on like the scariest topics to talk about. But also, like I said, you have more experience. You've already put out kind of a scary one, so you had that confidence that you could do it. Like how is that going into that next big one that you had done?
Yeah, I wasn't really scared to share the body dysmorphia one, and I don't think this one was like the first, or the one where I think I texted you and I was like, do you ever just like feel terrified when you press the button?
Yeah.
But I mean, it was such a short-lived thing. But yeah, it was the first time of me saying things that were very intimate about myself. I mean, I shared in it that I had at one point in my life lost the will to live. And I mean, I was very clear on that. And to be very clear here, like I've never wanted to hurt myself. I've never not wanted to be alive. But I think that that's something that people can really relate to, and fear saying that's like, sometimes you just don't want to do life right now, and you just want to like curl up in bed and just sleep for a few weeks until things are easier. You just have had enough. And it's like, that's kind of what I meant by like the will to live. But I mean, sharing that is hard, because you also go, somebody might read that and just be like, wow, like this girl is crazy. And you know what? If that's what you think, then maybe I am. But I mean, that was a part of my journey. But yeah, I knew that was kind of the first one where I'm like, all right, no turning back. Like we're sharing. And I mean, I texted my mom, she's so sweet. She, again, doesn't really understand blogs or like anything, which I mean, I don't blame her. I don't really understand blogs, which I've already said. Yeah. But, so we had been talking a while back, and eventually I do want to set up the blog so that it can go to people's emails. But right now I'm just posting the links on social media. So she, at one point we were talking, she's like, well, I mean, I saved the link to your website. So like I check it every day just so that I don't miss anything. Cause like I want to be a reader, and and I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom, like you don't need to check it every day. Like I'll just send you it when I publish one, I'll just send you the link. And so I sent her the link the other day, and I said, this might be a tougher one for you to read, not because it has anything to do with you or anything like that, but I know that you never like to hear me being hurt. Yeah,
of course. And no parent would, right? No parent would. I struggle with that same thing.
And so I said, but here it is. So it's up to you. And she texted me back right away and said like, wow, like that was a tough read, but good job. And so that one was probably the tougher, but I'm sure there will be tougher ones and easier ones. And
even like that same subject, like again, just from our conversation, that is very much a drop in the bucket of what you could have talked about on that too. So like,
for sure,
there is, if you choose to,
there's more there. Yeah. Yes.
But I kind of wanted to just circle back to what you said about that, because that was probably the first time I'd heard anyone, because I've always been very clear of that. Like I've never contemplated suicide ever. Like it's never, I've really struggled to even because I've never even come close to it. I struggle to wrap my head around it, and it's so prevalent. And like just growing up in a small town, for a town of however many people it is, suicide is something that the town has been ravaged by. Like just like everybody has been affected. Almost everybody from Slave Lake has. Now magnify that by a big city where you know many more people. Maybe it's less. Who knows? But it's a big deal. Yeah. And I struggle to even wrap my head around it. But when you said like that you've just kind of given up like the will to do life. It's not to live. Like you want to be alive, but you don't want to
do life. Yeah.
I'd never heard someone put it like that. But when I read that, I was like, oh, that is exactly, like I didn't know how to, it's not like I didn't know how to say it, because like Yeah, you put it in those words. I just didn't think anyone would ever understand. Like, I felt like, man, how would people get it? But when I heard you say it, it's like, oh, she knows what I mean. So now it's like, so people must
that's
know.
The exact, like,
exactly, right? Like,
that's what I'm looking for is
yeah.
like, yeah. And whereas like, that's a phrase I say all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even think, I mean, I don't talk about all of it, but I mean, I didn't even think of anything of like the way that I said that. But for that, just the way that I said it to resonate.
Yeah.
That's everything that I'm like looking for. Just for someone to be like, oh, she knows what I'm feeling. Like, that's exactly how I feel. I've just never said it.
And that, like, that was both amazing to read and then tough to be like, oh, like it almost brought it all back. Like, I haven't felt like that in the last couple of days, but like over the last few months, there's been multiple times where I've been in that place. Like, again, like very clearly did not think about killing myself, did not think about hurting myself at all. Like, it just doesn't even cross my brain. But if I think what you said of like, you just sleep for a while, like it's not even that, because like that is to me of like my brain of like, oh, that I have such an efficiency psycho-ness that I have to be like, oh, the efficiency of like losing 4 weeks would like kill me. Even if like, that's kind of what I want to do. What I would like to do is just, if I could just hit pause and have the world and just grab a stack of books or like just curl up in bed and like listen to podcast. If I could just pause and just like hibernate. And like just have the world pause and like I could just be away from everybody and just deal and just process and try to be okay again. And then I can go back on, because it's so hard to process and become okay and keep up appearances and put that smile on your face. Like, that's what's so hard, right? And then you're not only trying to do that and just get by, but now you need to kick your ass into gear and try and find traction. That is so tough for me, because it's like, I'm using so much just to try and do both of those things I just stated, that if I could just pause and get over that, I'm sure I could come back. I could unpause life and be ready to go again. Like, I'm sure of that. But like that feeling, I hadn't felt like I could really explain it till I read that from you. Like, and just want to say thank you for like putting that out, because like that's what I need to be able to come here and have the impetus to dive into that subject of what that is and kind of like walk around with it and bat it around. Because this is how I process things, like talking out and trying to like, I don't even know what I'm going to say until it comes out of my mouth. Right?
Me too. Like, I think out loud.
Yeah.
That took, I was doing back years ago, I was doing therapy and talking about my relationship a little bit and communications and things like that, and frustrations around where I'm like, I just want them to say something or, you know, and it was through that I realized through that session and like a conversation about it, that I think out loud quite often. Yeah. Like, I have no idea what's about to come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That is not everybody. Some people actually need to formulate their thought before they're ready to express. Sometimes I wish that I did that, because the amount of times I put my foot in my mouth is just, but yeah, it's different to do that way. But I love that you said that, and you're welcome. Thanks. Oh. But I love that you said that too, because what you're describing, I cannot like, that's not at all what my experience was. Yeah. It's vastly different, but we can still describe it in the same way. I can still talk about my experience, and it's not like, okay, if you haven't had the exact same experience, you can't relate to this. It's that like, you can take that and put it to your own experience. And that just like you saying that makes me go, okay, like this is, I want it to be universal for people to be able to apply it in different ways. And so for you to describe that so uniquely, where a lot of the parts of that are not the same feelings that I've ever experienced is really cool. But I mean, it's still the same thing. Yeah.
And like, just to know, like, because like what held me back so much with that is like to talk about that concept, which is very different. Like we said, like different manifestations of it, but like, you might feel this as well, but like when I wanted to describe what I was feeling, every kind of like wordplay, everything that would come around, it all just sounded like it was suicide. Right. Like, and I was like, but it's not. Like, I'm not like, that is, I'm telling you guys, like, I think like I'm worried that people are going to think that's what I'm thinking, but like, because it's hard to think, because every way I would describe it, like, oh, like it's too much. Like, I just don't want to be here anymore. Like, I just don't, like, it sounds so much, but it's like,
it's scary for people to hear.
It's scary for people to hear, but it's not scary for me, because I know there was never that there. And like, I would imagine you can never put yourself in other people's shoes, but like, I feel like I understand, like, if someone is suicidal, I can understand that a lot more after getting to that point. I just don't have whatever that is. And what actually worries the fuck out of me, and this might be kind of a morbid subject to get into, but what else are we here for? But knowing myself, of like being able to get to those low of points and never have any sort of suicidal ideation, no harm ideation, and to know that we are so prescribing, and all for it, whatever you need to get you through. But like antipsychotics, SSRIs, antidepressants, there's so much of them, and so many of them have a side effect of suicidal ideation. And I wonder how many people are at that point, because that's what I've had so many people suggest to me over the last 2 years. Well, why don't you go on some antidepressants, right? And I know they're all looking out for me. I don't love when people say that to me. Just my own, so I don't really react well to it. And I know people are just love me and want me to be okay and are trying to give actionable suggestions. But I always wonder, like, what if that is what changed that? I got onto something that in completely good faith, trying to get better, but that's what changed that thing. And then you were suicidal. Like, I wonder how often that is and how common that is, because we don't really understand them all that well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I know the whole picture, but I can only tell you what I've learned, because when I had the same worry, actually, it wasn't even me that came up with it. It was someone in my life that was like, no, I don't want you to go on those because you're just going to commit suicide. And so it was something that I talked to my doctor about and said, like, okay, like, I've been putting this off for 6 months. I've been doing everything else. Like, this is one of my fears. One of my fears was I don't want to be a different person at all. Like, I would rather be in pain than be numb. Yeah. And like, I am not willing to do that. And 2 was, I've heard that like people go on antidepressants and then commit suicide. And the way that she explained it to me was that those people were always suicidal. They just had absolutely no energy. Yeah. So now they take an antidepressant. It starts helping with their systems, but they have their thought process hasn't caught up yet. And now they just have the energy to do it.
And the will. Yeah.
So I don't know if you never had that thought. I can't say. I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't explained to me that that's like, that it changes something in the brain. Yeah. I don't think it's that. It's just that all of a sudden, like, you've been thinking this for weeks, but like, you literally can't get out of bed. And I can relate to that, where it's like, I don't really care if I lose my job. I don't care if, like, you know, like, where it's like, I'm not moving. I don't care about anything. And then all of a sudden you have a little bit of motivation and you're like, oh, actually I can go through with something that I've been thinking about.
And that is the only explanation I've ever heard. And that's the only, like, having that fear that we both just said, like, we haven't, it's probably way more common. I'm sure lots of people have thought about that. That's the only backup I've ever gotten to that. And until I got to the point where I've realized, okay, I've gotten as low can get, and that just never crossed like that. I love life too much. Like, I would never want to be away from it. If I got onto an antidepressant and I killed myself, what they would say is, no, he was always suicidal, but that's what it was. But I know that's not true. Right. And I wonder, and I'm sure that is the case. And I think that is very common. I think that is probably way more common than what I'm trying to describe.
But you never know. But you're wondering.
No, I just wonder, because like, you never know. And I also just think there's such a role for them. And I'm not trying to be like antidepressants. It's kind of an odd phrase of words, but
it's a double negative.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be that person, but I do really think we don't adequately try to address things without that. I think and everybody's different, but I think there's certain doctors, certain places, certain areas of the world where we overprescribe them, and we go to that before trying to address other things. Like you said, of like 6 months of trying all these other things, all the shit you were going through, right? Like that is, but I think there's people that just, and young people too, of like, they just are in a tough time in their life. Like, you know, like.
Yeah. Like high school is hard.
High school is hard. Exactly. Yeah. And it's not to say, I'm not to say that no high schooler needs antidepressant. That's not what I'm saying either. But
you worry about some of the things being very mainstream. And I mean, I think it's wonderful that it is so mainstream. Yeah. And I've pushed for that. And I think it's great that you see even like characters and shows that are struggling with gender identity and depression and anxiety and all kinds of different things. And I think it's great that people can see those people and relate. Yeah. That being said, it's scary that it's scary thinking that it could influence somebody that, you know, is, yeah.
It's an interesting.
Does having it so widespread, you know,
it just like so many other things in life, it's a double-edged sword. There's good and there's bad with it. Right. And I think just so many things, because some of these things just get a taboo around them, where for so many years, it was so hard to even be able to bring it up and to get over that taboo of even talking about it, that people are so scared to bring anything that could be shown in a negative light. They're like, no, we just worked so hard to get this to the mainstream. Don't say anything bad. And it's like, well, no, that's not how life works. Like, you have to show both good and the bad so you can be educated on that. And I'm sure this is the only thing I am very sure 20 years from now, we're in a much different spot from, because they're so new and we're just kind of figuring everything out, and we're way out to swing on the one side of the pendulum, and it's going to swing back, and we're going to get a better understanding. We're going to find the place where they really fit. And we're probably just in a transitionary time where we're feeling a lot of the suffering because of that lack of understanding, because of the rate of change. Same thing with social media, same thing with just technology as a whole, right? Like, I think that is the same as all these things. I don't want to be that person that doesn't ask these questions and doesn't do these thought experiments because of the taboos around.
Right.
How are you ever going to get that pendulum to the middle place if you don't have those wacky people on the outskirts that don't really give a fuck like me and talk? And, I'm going to bring those things up and say, well, I don't know. I would love to sit across from someone that had a real deep knowledge in this. Maybe, me and you talking about it is not the right. Right. We're just noodling here, but
exactly. I can only speak to my own experience, which has been, trying a lot of different methods and ending up deciding that medication was for me, and then overcoming the stigma around that, and for myself, and then for others, and being open to talking about it. And then the fact that it's not something that is, I think in the beginning, I thought it was something that was going to be short term for me potentially. And I hope it's not a lifelong thing for me, but it's not proving to be a short term thing. Yeah. It wasn't a one-stop fix. It was something that I was on the same medication for a couple of years, and then ended up switching something up, thinking, okay, can I feel better? And so I can only speak to that's been mine. And I think I've been very conservative about trying things. And I don't know. I don't know.
I think that shows a lot though too, of the willingness to try all those things, right? And I think that is almost a sign of the worst, when you're not trying things too. And I think so many people get to that point where they don't even have the effort to
That's
try
the thing
things,
is right? I recognize that it's really hard. And I recognize that also there's probably people that get to the point where you need a medication so that you can even be able to try those things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's okay.
I am this person, so I don't mean to, to pick on these people, but the people that just, I'll try exercise, and it's I see that too. And I think that is one of the biggest things you can do, but that is really tough when you're
laying in bed and you don't care. There was a point where I was showing up at work at 2 p.m. and not saying a word to anyone about even why I wasn't in or whatever. It was just I had just laid in bed and I didn't really care if I lost my job. Yeah. And I was in a position, thankfully, that I was able to do that. And honestly, when my boss kind of stepped in and said, and she's like, I'm you're not in trouble. It's just I'm worried because this is not you. You are so reliable. And all of a sudden, you're just coming in randomly or not coming in at all, and not saying anything to anyone. But so when you can't even, you don't even want to get out of bed. No, for sure. I'm just going to go for a run. That'll fix
I'm just going to go renew my gym membership right now.
It's I'm not even eating right now, but thanks. Thanks
and
for the tip.
And that's where trying to combine those understandings of, it doesn't mean that exercise and a healthy diet and all these things aren't huge factors for mental health that need to be widely established so that you understand that. But to just swing those hammers like they're the only tools in the thing is absolutely ridiculous too, and shows a lack of compassion for the actual situation and for those that unfortunately know it well enough to be able to speak firsthand on it, right? And that was, and I'm talking about this it's abstract, but over the last couple of years, I've been through this where I used to be that guy on the other side. I'd never even had a hint of depression. I shouldn't say that. It never got bad enough where I actually realized that it was depression of what I was going through at times when I was young, but which is great. And I love that, that means I lived a pretty great life. Right. in that time, I was, oh Jesus, almost ate shit there. I was that person that, would, just get over it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, exercise, like, and then when I felt it myself, I'm like, oh, I was so wrong. There's no way. Yeah, exactly. Right. And like, you have to look back on your self-compassion because I only knew what I knew at that point. Now I know more. But now when I hear people bang that kind of drum, it's like, oh, you just don't understand. And that's okay too. Right. But like, then on the other side of that too, I think some people that just don't understand the benefits of some of those other things, like the exercise and like the diet and all that stuff too, they just are so far to the other side where they say, well, that's ridiculous. Like that has nothing to do with, this is just a chemical imbalance of the brain. Say, no, you're both right. Mm-hmm. But you can't shut yourself off to the other person's points because it all is a whole and it needs to be everything together. And it might be medication, it might be exercise, it might be this, and it might be a different order of those things that get you to, you may be getting out for walks is the exercise you need to be able to get you out of bed to go to the doctor to get the medication, right? Like everybody might be different of the mix of things that they need to get them to that point. But like, yeah, you can't really throw any of those things out because if you're really going to try and make some real steps forward, you might need all of it. Yeah. And more. And some things that, like what's most interesting to me these days is like, we've struggled like with antidepressants. Most people's experiences, you have to try 3 or 4 different things. You might get lucky. You might get a great one off the start that works for you, right? Like you said, like works for a couple of years. That's awesome. But on the whole, like per drug, like they have like really, really low efficacy rates. Like out of the 20% is really good. That's why you have to try so many and find one that works for you and all that. But now they're trying some taboo ones like psilocybin, like mushrooms, like ketamine, and that have MDMA therapy, have like 95% efficacy rates. Like that word is tough to say more than 3 times. Efficacy rates that are completely unheard of in this realm for things like depression, that completely, and the only thing stopping them from mainstream adoption is the taboo around them because they're drugs. They're drugs, right? Like that's big and scary to people, and it's changing very rapidly, and that like fills me with hope of like there's ketamine therapies, places popping up all over the States right now, right? Like, and there's, so
it'll come just like people that used weed for their glaucoma for years before
exactly.
it was
legal
or,
Yeah. And like,
it'll come with time.
That fills me with hope. And like, that's something that looking out towards the future, like that just fills me with joy. And like, the more talking about it on places like this, people are, what, like mushrooms and ecstasy, like are helping people's brains. And like for PTSD, it's amazing. For like soldiers coming back, it's like unbelievable what is happening. And like to know that, there's probably a lot of hurdles in front of it to get mainstream adoption, but it's moving fast, like faster than I ever thought it could. Like, that's awesome. Because
honestly, as long as any improvement, I'm on board for. And I think like what I've realized the most is like, you're talking about people like, oh, you should do this, you should do this. I think the biggest thing that I've realized with my own struggles and with struggles of people around me and supporting people is that all I can really do is hold space for someone.
For sure.
And I think that's the biggest thing is that I don't know what's going to work for you. I don't know. I can tell you what I've done. I can't suggest anything for you. Yeah. All I can do is hold space for you and support you and love you and make you feel safe and try to make you feel like you're in a good environment to be able to figure those things out on your own. And I think that's, again, like with the blog is just like just being able to like talk about things, hold space. Like there's this meme I remember I sent it to the girls like, back when I was really struggling. And it's like, it's a meme and it's a skeleton like riding on a scooter down the street. And the meme is like, when you think you're going to have a terrible day. And then one of your friends texts the group chat and it's like, beep, beep, motherfucker. And it just like changes your whole day. And I'm just like, but you know what? There was times when that did change my whole day is the people that I was around. And I think knowing that that's the only thing I can affect on people just makes me that much more cognizant of when I become aware that somebody's struggling with anything is just like, okay, I can support you by listening. I can support you by holding space, making you feel safe, making you feel loved, and supporting you in whatever you decide.
Right.
And that's really all I can do.
Yeah. And like, that holding space idea is so powerful and so obvious once you learn it. And then still so hard to do. Yeah.
People want to give solutions.
Oh, I'm the worst. I am like, I'll put my hand up first. I am this guy. I'm so bad at that. And I try to get better at like when someone tells me, do you want to be heard or do you want solutions? Because I am a solution guy. And I don't, again, it goes back to my efficiency thing of like, well, why aren't we
fixing this problem? You've identified there's a problem.
Yeah, why are we not fixing it? Right. And like to realize that you are helping fix it by just listening, right? And
because it's so much more powerful if people come to the solution by themselves.
It is, right? And you can give it like a little nudge and you can just kind of, throw things out there. And that's where I think I've changed my language. You get to hear it all the time of like, when I realize that I'm stepping out of listening mode and into helping, I always caveat it with like, please tell me to fuck off, like, or something like that. Like, this might not be my place. You always say,
this isn't my place.
This isn't my place to say this.
Okay, proceed.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So I'm just wondering, like, like, stop me before I, like, and that's kind of my cue to you eventually of like, if you are in that mode where like, I don't want to hear it, I just want to listen, then you can stop me right there and be like, fuck off, I don't want to hear it. And I'll just go back to listening, right? But like, try and do that. But I still really struggle with it. And I think that's where I could do my best work on the podcast because I can kind of create just a general, so you're not making space for a certain person which has a very special power for people. And like, if you're anybody listening, like if you want to help someone in a way, that's probably the biggest thing you can do is just be there to listen and create that space. But what I do here is just kind of try and be as vulnerable as I can to create a general space for people to reflect upon and think their own, whatever shit you're going through, you can kind of bounce it off of this and what I'm going through and try and help in that one way. And it might not work for 99% of people, but just on the off chance, the one episode, the one thing I talked about with what one person's going through is going to match up. And then just by law of numbers, as it grows, the more episodes I do, the more of that space I create, the more. This person has called me like 6 times this podcast. Oh my goodness. I don't know who that is, but they are desperate to get a hold of old Nikki Poo.
Wow.
It even rang through my computer that time.
Oh,
interesting.
I'm not even noticing.
Didn't even notice?
No. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, that's the power of this is to, like create that general space. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough concept. And like, I will say that when I really realized the power of that and that's really all you can do is struggling with grief after death.
Yeah.
When there's nothing anyone can say. There's nothing anyone can say. Mm-hmm. And you get tired, or you don't get tired, but I mean, you hear all the, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't imagine, like, I wish there was something I could do. Like,
time heals all wounds.
You time heals, like, blah, blah, like just everything. And everyone means so well. Mm-hmm. But the best support I ever received was people that were holding space. And I can point to one specific time. It was outside of the funeral home. We had just done a viewing, mm-hmm. and I came out and I was very upset, and she just hugged me mm-hmm. and held me for, I have no idea. I think it was probably close to 10 minutes and just didn't let go. And we just stood there and it was the most powerful and impactful support I've ever received with no words. And I think experiencing that is huge to why I feel that way. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I definitely am a person a lot of friends come to for advice, and I get that a lot. Like, oh, you give the best advice. Like, I just need some Jayde advice. And so, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I do that too. Yeah. And but I think it's identifying when people want it, like you said. Exactly. And you're never gonna be perfect at it, and you're gonna get it wrong. And there's gonna be times where you give advice when you should have been listening. There's times when you're listening and someone came to you for advice, and maybe you could have said that thing that you were itching to say, but you held back because you were just trying to be a good listener, right? Like, you're always going to get it wrong, but as long as you're conscious of it and you're not doing what I did for, 24 years of my life where you'd never have listening mode, you're always just solution mode and you never do it. Mm-hmm. I'm just now starting to be able to delineate between the two because I recognize the power of it, right? Like, but until you recognize the power of that listening, giving space mode, you're always going to be that solution person. Yeah. I feel like maybe guys are a little bit worse at this too than girls. I find girls are much better listeners than guys at a lot of times. And I don't talk to a lot of guys, to be honest with you, to really say that confidently, but I don't know. I think my friends, there's something like in, that there's a quote that people listen to respond rather than listening to hear and understand. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like kind of the first cue is if you really listen to understand without thinking about what you want to say, mm-hmm. what you want to respond, whatever, which is hard. But if you actually listen to understand, you'll hear the cue of like what somebody's looking for.
Right.
Whereas if you're listening to respond, like you're missing it.
Because
you're already thinking in your own head of,
I would say that is the number one hardest part of like learning to be a podcaster, is exactly that, of keeping engaged to listening without thinking ahead of what you want to say.
Yeah. Because you don't want to have that lull like we talked about, but also like, you got to listen.
But you have to listen. And even like I've gotten so much better at it. Like it used to be really tough at the start. And now I'm at a point where I'm pretty good at it. But I've noticed myself a couple times today where I could see, and I think you probably wouldn't have been able to judge, but I can almost feel like you can subconsciously pick up that I'm no longer listening and I'm thinking of that. And like it almost changes the tone of what I hear, because I almost felt like I wouldn't recognize myself. I'd hear something change in your tone and that would snap me back into like, oh, I think she picked up that I was, and I'm probably just imagining that. But like,
oh, interesting.
It's so interesting. Like
I likely have done the same.
Yeah. And like, I didn't think that would be that hard. Like I'd listened to a ton of podcasts. That's no secret. And I've heard people talk about that, of like, you know, Joe Rogan's one of those guys that talks about that all the time, of like, you have to be actively listening. You can't be thinking about what you're going to say next. I always thought like, that doesn't sound that hard. And I started doing it and I'm like, whoa, that is hard.
Yeah.
I find, I was going to say, I think it's harder on the podcast than in real life, but I think I just notice it more because there's consequences. Like just in the conversation, you're going to be a shittier friend. You're going to be a worse listener, but there's not really any, but you do it on a conversation that's recorded and now you're going to see it yourself. And like when
it gets amplified when you listen.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. So I don't think it's any harder to do on a podcast versus, I think you just notice it more. It's amplified. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think even like learning the skill on a podcast, I become a much better listener outside of it. And like,
oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. And like, I think just like some of the, even just like taking me and you, some of the conversations we've had out on your deck at whatever time in the morning, right? Like just have like, we've been talking for 4 or 5 hours at the point, but like still completely engaged, locked in, like having these big conversations about it, right? Like, which is fun. I feel like eventually, if we do this enough, we're going to get to the point where some of those like deck conversations is what we talk about here, because like we've had some like, and we and you both know each other's reasons of why like we can't go to like some of those depths of some of the things we talked about, but like some of those things, like the things that people could learn about them one time, like when we get there, like we might be 40 years old at that point, but like
that's the stuff, right? Yeah. And that's, I mean, we talked about this at lunch, and it's with both of us with like these mediums of it's like, you know, that's like the good stuff, but I mean, you respect your own privacy, but even if you say, okay, I'm going to fully open up and be, then it's like you think about other people's privacy, and it's almost impossible to tell any story without 5 other people involved at least.
Exactly.
And yeah. But no, I agree. Something to shoot for.
Exactly. That's all it is. And that's what I do, like just myself, because I know like I have so much, like, let alone every different guest that sits in front of me, they're going to have their own folder of stuff that would be really great to talk about and people would really learn from. But there's certain things holding them back from that. And I think that's what I love about this medium and the length of it too, is like everybody has that folder and there's always going to be things holding them back. But like, every once in a while, you can almost feel at like the 1.5 to 2 hour mark, when you start getting the subject, something will just come up and you almost see it in their mind of like, they reach back, oh, I have something really good, but oh, that's that folder. And they go, you know what, fuck it. And they pull it out and we have like an amazing conversation.
I did that today.
Right? Like,
yeah.
And like, that's
I was like, okay.
Exactly. But if you only talked for an hour, that would never happen.
Yeah. I wouldn't have, there's things I wouldn't have said for, even like when we just first started like talking about the blog, like I could talk about it so much different now, you know, when you just like get comfortable. So yeah, for sure. That is powerful.
Now I'm trying to think of like other blog questions.
We talked about everything, but I just mean, I feel like I'm more articulate as time goes
And I think that's something like I can learn of, like, I think I just was trying to jump into it and like get it. I probably should have saved that. I probably should talk about some other stuff to get you to that comfortable point. So that when you did
little foreplay.
Little foreplay. Come on.
Little foreplay next time.
King of the foreplay, hey? Just fucked it up. Look at me go. Oh, that's funny. How about that buco though? Let's just go back to that, because that pizza I had today was, it was pretty top notch. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That soup, probably the best tomato bisque I've ever had.
Really?
I think so. I think that takes the cake. Takes the soup.
I can't confident. I've had a lot of tomato bisque, but it was really good.
What is from memory? I'm not going to ask you what your best tomato bisque is.
No,
that's a tough question.
Please don't.
I would never ask you. I would never do such a thing.
Okay.
Can you remember a significant tomato bisque other than buco? Or you just know generally, I just know, like, I've had some good bisques.
Because you know what? I've had some good bisques. You know, a lot of like some of the really best food that I've had, or like just like random, is like, at a random golf course or like here, where it's like I don't even know where I ate that, but it's like, God damn, that was good.
Gotta find that again. You need like a spreadsheet.
Yeah, there was this golf course my grandparents took me to in Kelowna for lunch, and I had a pulled pork sandwich on a pretzel bun, which is like not like a normal, like I like pulled pork, but it's like not like a typical like, it's not a go-to.
You're not
for
a big
me.
pulled pork.
I'm a big like chicken sandwich girl. Like that's a go-to for me. Like
grilled?
Crispy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a fair question.
We're not counting calories.
All right.
But like that's a go-to. Like if I don't really like know what I want, like that's kind of like my safe choice. Anyways, so I ordered this pulled pork sandwich on a pretzel bun. It is probably top 30 things I've ever ate in my life.
Yeah.
Like just at a total random lunch. Top 30. I feel confident in saying it was so good. Like I've had some really good meals.
Dude. I remember I was actually thinking this as we were walking out of Buco to come over here and do this podcast. I was just thinking like, I was walking out and I was just like so happy, like just like so content of like, just like, you know, when you have like a really good meal and good conversation too. Like I think it was just like a good meal, but like, I love and I hate my relationship with food and like how much it can put me in that mood and like how much it affects me. And like, that's probably not that healthy, but also I feel bad for people that don't do that. Like if you're just one of those people that eats like one salad a day.
Yeah.
And like,
people that literally are like, oh, if I could take like a tablet and it would just be like all the nutrients I need. I'm like, what?
Yeah. I don't understand that. But like, I wish I could find some like middle point where I could still have that enjoyment of that, but I wasn't
like,
eating everything in sight all the time. But that's how I roll. I can do it, but I have to like lock it down, like get into it takes me about 2 weeks to snap into it where I'm really good and like now I'm locked in and I'm eating like really healthy and like I can hold on to that. But then when I go off the rails, it's in 2 weeks, it's completely off the rails. And that's why the only consistency I have is I know if I force myself to run 10 kilometers each day, I can only do within that roller coaster of eating good, right? Because whether I'm eating really good, I don't stop working out because if I'm eating bad, I really force myself to work out. But like, as long as I keep that, I can kind of keep shit within the rails. But like, man, I got to work on that. I wish I could have like a more healthy relationship there with food. And like, I've noticed that definitely with like depression and stuff, like how much
eating healthy makes a huge difference.
Yeah. But then also how much I lean on bad food for comfort and coping. Like huge, like almost like I always knew I did that, but like, it's just so highlighted. And then the thought of like what really holds me back too, of like knowing I need to make a change like for my mental health. And like one of the biggest things is I need to like snap into like a healthier diet and stuff. And like the thought, like just the thought of losing that coping, like that comfort of like going through like, oh, if I'm feeling what I'm feeling right now, I'm barely fucking holding on, white knuckling it. And then I lose my biggest coping. Like that is so terrifying for me. It's like, I'll come up with some excuse. It's playoffs. After playoffs, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Yeah. I definitely struggle with like both swings of that like with food, because like I love food. Like the dopamine.
We've had some good
like
months.
the dopamine hit I get like when my food, like I do like a little dance when I eat good food. Like so it's like, ooh, yeah. But also I can be like a real glutton that way. But then also, I can swing the other way of just like telling myself that, you need to smarten up and like not letting yourself like have anything. And that's not good either. So it's always.
And I think that's where like, I don't have that side of it, which like I tell myself, I wish I had that, but I don't think I do, because I know so many people that like have the other side of it where like they can almost like snap into it where they're telling themselves like, you don't need to, like you almost get to the side of like not eating anything, right? Like, but more so what I'm saying is like, I don't ever have that. Even when I am at my best of like eating really good, and I said I can do that, it is a mammoth struggle every day. And I have to think about, I need an app to track my food. I need to like actually for it. And each time I'm still for it. Like I am white knuckling it the whole time I'm doing it. Right. And it's so much easier. Like once you get into 2 weeks, you get into kind of a habit of it.
Yeah.
But at no point is it easy. At no point am I not tempted. Like it becomes a lot easier, but it's still immensely difficult. Right. Like,
so I can completely lose my appetite to something like, or to. And
like my instinct is say, oh, I wish, but I know that is not true. And like I've talked about
it's an equal struggle.
It's funny to be around, because like growing up, it was always like nobody in my direct vicinity ever had like the problem of gaining weight, right? Like it was always everyone too big. Like that was always the thing. You got to be skinnier. And then with adding Liam to our family, my sister's husband, he's always trying to get bigger, like gain weight, like gain muscle and stuff. And like, it's and he's a big guy. Like he doesn't, he's not as skinny. I wouldn't call him skinny by any means, but I think I would guess, didn't know him growing up, but I would guess he grew up skinny, and that was, the thing to do. And
bulk up a bit.
Yeah. And to talk to other people, right? Like I've talked to some girls that have that sort of, like, I've always been listening, and they want to gain weight. And that is a sign of like their mental health. Like when they're mentally healthy and in a good place, they can put on weight. And when they lose that, it all falls off them. Right. And like, I'm just like, oh man, like it's so hard to wrap my head around
that's bad.
That is bad, right? And they're like, oh yeah, like I need to put on. I'm like, oh dude, like
you're like, what? If I had that problem, like give me a day. Like, I know what you mean.
Oh my god, right? But like, you just never know. Like, but I love that, to see something that I totally cannot wrap my head around, but so clearly makes sense, and they can articulate it to me in a way that can get me not too understanding, but to close enough to kind of get enough to understand a little bit of it. You're never going to fully understand that without walking a mile in those shoes. But like, that is so fascinating to me, because I think I struggle with the idea of knowing other people think differently than me, because I'm so weird. I know everyone must think differently than me, but at some level I'm just like, no, I'm right. Everybody else is wrong. Everyone probably thinks more or less like me.
There is a thing to be said about that. I've said that multiple times in the last year, not like more specifically about like misunderstandings that I've had with, or like misunderstandings with people, or you know what, actually it's that I give people like the total benefit of the doubt, and like some people just like really let me down, or like do things that I just like find unfathomable, or like, and that's when it kind of comes up to me where I'm like, I just assume that everybody thinks about things the way that I do, and they don't.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, it's universal with a lot of different topics.
And then you add on to that too of like, there's different layers of that. Like everyone thinks the way I do, but then it's like, yeah, but what if someone grows up with a crazy fucking childhood, or grows up in a city versus a small town? Like people are like, at their core, humans are so similar, but there's also such a range of differences of like what you've been through that can like throw completely different paths in front of two people that might have even had similar upbringings, but then one thing happens and now you're
I agree.
diametrically opposed in where you're going, right? Like it's
because there's like the environmental stuff, but then there's also, I believe, like just who you are, your
Big
soul,
time.
your mind, like just who you are as a person. And I think that's so obvious in siblings that can be super close in age. They grow up in the same environment with the same parenting, like, things, and they can be so entirely different.
Right.
And so then you're like, well, that's not environmental then.
Yeah. And it's funny because like me and my sister, super different people in like so many ways. But then there's also some really deep integral ways to like who I am that I almost don't associate it with anybody but Courtney. Like she's the only one that understands it. And I feel like we have a very deep connection on like some of the weird things of like, that's just who we are. And I've never met another person. And I think that's Chase is one of the closest people to that. We're like one of the weirdest things, like we would never, if something was wrong with our meal, like we would never tell a waiter. Right. Like, and like, it was so funny. We went on that road trip, right? Like if something was wrong, like, or he got overcharged for his meal or something, like we're not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. And we both, in the past, it was always our girlfriend, like, well, they're the person that taught, we don't do this. But then it was the two of us idiots. Right. And I was telling my mom that I was like, oh yeah, like you should have seen this trip. Like me and Chase, like there was, neither of us were saying that stuff. Like we're the, the two biggest people like that have that trait in the world. And she goes, no, that's Courtney. She's way bigger than both of you. I'm like, oh yeah, she is. Like I would say something way before she would. And just like little things like that.
I could see that with Courtney. Yeah, like she would eat around a hair.
For sure. She ain't saying shit. Right. Yeah. And like, again, like same with like the little idiosyncrasies, like that's always like I can't speak for anybody else. But, like I love that about Courtney. Right. And I love those little things about myself too. But like that was not the greatest example of it, but like for how different we are, like
I know what you mean, where it's like those things where you're like, is that like, where does that come from? Is that just chance that we're both the same?
Yeah. Yeah. And because like you say, same genes, same environment, similar in age, like, is that something that was like just in our nature, or is that like something that was nurtured into us? Because then you ask the same question about our differences and it's like, oh, I'm the biggest goofball ever. Like I would, like get a couple drinks at me and I'm the biggest clown in the room, like trying to make everybody laugh. And like, Courtney, the thought of having the spotlight on her like that would be mortifying, right? Like it's so weird to see like where the similarities are and where the differences are, and how you can have someone so similar and so different at the same time. Like, humans are interesting, aren't they?
Yes. Incredibly interesting.
Yeah. And imagine if you could just have a job where you just sat in front of all these different interesting people and got to talk to them and see why they're interesting and why they're different and similar to other people. Wouldn't that be cool?
I would like that, I think.
Yeah.
It would get tiring probably. But like, that's like all the shows that you see where they're like doing those like weird human experiments. Like, I mean, like Divergent or The Wild, or like, or really like anything where it's like, yeah, where you're like, but I kind of get it. It's like, that's bad, but it's like, I kind of get it. Cause like there's stuff to be learned of like observing humans in like different environments and why people do the way that they do.
You know what show popped into my head when you said that? I'm trying to remember the name of the show. I can picture it. What was that like prank show where it wasn't pranks? It was like scare tactics. Did you ever see Scare Tactics?
No.
Oh my God, Jayde. You got to go home and YouTube Scare Tactics. Anybody listening, YouTube Scare Tactics. I don't know if it's going to be on YouTube, but it was this show where they would like Hollywood style elaborate.
Like almost like punked?
Like punked, but instead of to like get you mad or like rattled, it was to scare the shit out of you. So there'd be like fake alien invasions, fake like hostage situations.
I would love that. Because I love like the adrenaline of being scared.
You love the adrenaline of being scared? Do you like horror movies?
Yeah.
Oh, I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake, the 2022 one last night.
I haven't seen it.
Oh man, it's pretty cool.
I used to like be so terrified of horror movies, and my friends would just like make me watch them. Like we had sleepovers like every weekend, and we would just like just like force it upon me. And yeah, now I do enjoy them, but I love that like rush of like adrenaline when someone like jumps out and scares you, or like movies with pop outs.
I hate that.
Like it's not even like, I do enjoy horror movies like with like the slow build and stuff, but like I love a good pop out. It just like cleans the pipes out.
Cleans the pipes out. That's an interesting way to look at it. So are you more like paranormal type scary movies? Or are you more like
no,
horror,
like murders.
Murder. So like a Scream type,
yeah, I like Scream.
Like slashers maybe kind of thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting. And those do have a lot more like the pop-ups. Every horror genre has pop-ups, I think. That's kind of that's a staple. A given, Interesting. Mm-hmm. What about like the paranormal ones? Are you into that at all? Or are you more to
I'm into
the Insidious, the
Insidious has the best pop-outs.
Dude, I know. Insidious 1, 2, and 3 are on Netflix right now. And like, I don't want to do this to myself.
But you should.
But I should.
I know I should also.
I do not like scary movies unless I'm with somebody.
Yeah, well, you can watch them with me. I'll protect you.
Let's go. You give me the option. I'm the weirdest person
because like I'll watch like movies about like like home invasions, murders, like stalkers and stuff, and like I live downtown Edmonton by myself.
Yeah,
like
bold.
What was I watching? Oh, one day I was watching Silence of the Lambs, and like someone's like that doesn't free. I'm like, no, like I don't know.
I've been desensitized after all these sleepovers of getting like shit scared out of me.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny.
It's my time. It's my time.
Yeah, I found Texas Chainsaw Massacre, super gory, super gross. I wasn't all that scared of it.
That's the thing is like almost when it gets too gory, it's like ugh.
Yeah, and it was so over the top ridiculous. It didn't really scare me all that much. But I remember watching. Not the original, because I think the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like old movie. Yeah. I think they did a remake like around like 2005. Yeah, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I remember watching that one.
That one's scary.
And it was scary as fuck.
Yeah.
Holy balls. Oh, yeah. I was going into it expecting that level of scary. No, I was going into it expecting that it was that one I'd already seen. Because like, if I'm trying to be
like the 80s one or whatever?
No, like the 2000s one.
Oh, going into this new one.
Thinking... As we turned it on, then I realized, this is a remake. And then I got way more scared of it because I was like...
You're like, okay, now I haven't seen it yet.
Exactly, because that's what I was going through. We're going through all these movies, like trying to pick a horror movie. And I'm just like, I've seen this one, I'm like, kind of trying to push us towards watching one that I've seen before. Because then it's a way less scary if you've seen it before.
And
then
I know
you can
who you're watching it with.
Yeah. And so I thought I was going into it being like, I've seen this one. This is going to be nothing. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I haven't seen this. Now I'm scared. But it turned out not to be too bad. It was just, spoiler alert to anybody that thinks they're going to watch, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2022 remake, but like kind of had me the whole movie. Like it was all right. Like some good, horror tropes, some good, crazy murders. But then like at one point he just gets someone up on like his chainsaw, like holding them in the air, like chainsawing them, like while holding them up, and then like throws them off like 20 feet off his chainsaw. And they survive to like do something else in the movie. And I'm like, okay, you lost me. You lost me there. Come on. Yeah. Like, I will take him fighting a whole bus full of kids and just like chainsawing them all one at a time. Just like, that's pretty realistic. I'll give you that. But come on, you're not going to. Me picking apart the realisms of Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably just a failed venture in itself, but I had fun with it. It was pretty fun. How do we get onto that?
I don't know. I said that I like being scared, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm still blown away by that.
Yeah.
You've told me this before.
A good scare and a good cry will do a girl wonders.
Do a girl wonders.
Cleans the pipes out.
Well, if people come away from this episode with anything at all,
that's the advice.
A good scare and a good cry.
Yep.
Now that I know that, I might have to like
reborn.
I might have to get like a spare key from one of your friends and hide in your apartment and scare the shit out of you.
I would actually love that. The girls at my old office used to like hide under my desk and stuff like that, and
that is mind blowing.
I love it.
That I don't think I've ever heard someone say they like being scared. Like I know a lot of people that are,
like I wouldn't
50,
want to like don't like prolong it like all night. Like do like if you're doing like creepy shit, like but like a quick pop out. Like
I remember one time, just quick story time before we wrap it up. We've been going for like 3 hours here, but I remember one time it was kind of later at night. And in my parents' place, their room is kind of like at the end of the hallway, like down to the left.
Yeah.
And I was like still in the hallway and I heard my dad coming. And he's in his underwear. Like it's like not like super late at night, but like late enough. And I was young enough that like I don't know, maybe I went to get like a drink or something. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna scare him. So I hide just like around the corner and I jump out and scare him. And I think he just like scared like reaction punch, like punched me in the chest. And like it hurt, but it was so funny. Like the both of us just started laughing. Like once you realize
that's the thing is that's a lot of people's reaction is to hit. And that's like always gets me about scaring anyone. I'm like, I don't want to get decked in the face. Just
jump out with your guard up. Oh, that is hilarious.
I remember last Halloween I wanted to do like I wanted to scare a couple of our friends at Mackenzie's because Mackenzie's apartment had this like creepy hallway by the parkade that you had to go through to get to the elevator. Right. And I was like, we had a couple friends that were meeting us and I'm like, I want to scare these guys. Like I'm gonna get like a Jason mask or like a Michael Myers mask and like a pair of coveralls and a knife. And like, I'm going to be in this hallway. Whoa. And she's like, oh my God, you should, but like, be really careful with the knife. Cause you might accidentally stab someone.
You may want a fake knife.
Like someone might come at you and like,
oh my God, can you imagine?
But yeah, like, I live
go
for
away
that
for
stuff.
murder.
Yeah, seriously.
That's so funny. Shit, I was going to ask you something there and I forgot it. See, I tell you, this happens all the time. Scaring somebody. Murder, mask, coveralls. That was before coveralls. Damn it, I lost it.
Sorry.
We're talking about just before that. Ingle punching me. Scaring them. Fighting. I don't know. Damn. I hate losing it.
It'll be off the pod, but
it's definitely gonna come back to me. But before we get off the pod, how do people find your photography, your blogs, your website, all those things?
Everything. First of
everything
all,
you got.
Two things that I did talk about in this podcast that if you want to check out is the vault, the gym, the vault.
Right? Yeah.
So it's the Vault YAG if you want to check that out. I also talked about my friend who is an artist and you should really check her out too. Her page is called Cass Brat Art. CASSBRATT art. She does really amazing work. And then my stuff, so my website is www.byjayde.ca.
Jayde.
Jayde, yes, exactly. My Instagram is at Jaydelina, so JAYDEALINA. And if you find that, you'll find a link to my photography page, which is photos by _Jayde. Yeah, but it's linked from my original Instagram.
And so is your website.
So is my website. Yeah, everything.
So if you get to
my Instagram, everything will be hubbed kind of through that or through the website. Thank you.
Solid.
That's what my website's going to be the hub, and that's why I was like, I'm just going to make this, and anything I want to do with it, if I
start a podcast one day.
Yeah. And
if you need any help with that.
Well, yeah. Well, you already have your setup. I'll just keep guesting on yours.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair. Do a monthly Jayde visit. Tell me all about what you're up to.
Not opposed.
Well, it sounds pretty fun. Anything that you thought I was going to ask you about that I didn't?
No, I don't think so.
Anything we didn't cover?
No, I think we covered everything in
Ran the gamut. Ran the gamut. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for being here.
Always enjoy our visits.
Yeah.
And I like that we get to share a couple of them.
Yeah.
One day we'll share the really good stuff with everyone.
You guys just wait. You don't even know what's about to hit you when me and Jayde let the what do they call that on the golf cart?
The good times roll. Oh, we let the governor out.
Let's take the governor off. Thank you. I'm glad you got there. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Jayde. All right. Thanks for everybody for listening all the way through the end. If you're here, please do me the big favor. Head to the TheVonDubCast YouTube page, subscribe. Go to Oilers Uncensored on YouTube and subscribe. Go to the new TikTok channel for the TheVonDubCast, subscribe there or follow or whatever you do on TikTok. And same thing for Twitter, Instagram, all those things. Please go check out Jayde's website by Jayde. Check out Jayde on Instagram. Check out her photography Instagram. Check out everything else we talked about in this episode. I hope you had a great time. I love you guys. Thank you so much for letting me do this, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye. Oh, let's go Oilers.